Welcome to Film Strip, movie reviews presented by Continuous Play Podcast. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Kurt.
I'm Nick.
And this is our review of Star Wars Episode VIII, The Last Jedi, starring Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Kelly Marie Tran, Andy Serkis, Laura Dern, and Benicio del Toro. Directed by Rian Johnson. In theaters now, of course, as of this recording in December of 2017. Already $450 million in the opening weekend box office, folks. But thanks for joining us again. And fellas, thanks for jumping in here late again to get in another Star Wars. So I just want to throw it to both of you. Kurt, I'll start with you. When did you see this and, your theater experience, all that stuff?
I saw this just yesterday at West Edmonton Mall, the biggest mall in Canada. Not a good place to be the week before Christmas. Had to go to the overflow parking. It was like a hike just to make it to the theater. But it was worth it just because, seeing a Star Wars movie.
I mean, you had to go on a mission to do something that ultimately didn't matter. You should have just gone earlier.
A little bit. That was ironic, yeah.
But come on, it's Canada. You guys are all like super polite. Everybody was probably opened the door for you. So, and probably, everybody's polite. So I'm sure you had a good time.
Everyone was miserable, but very polite.
What about you, Nick?
Actually, I saw it this morning. Unfortunately, we had to come up to Wisconsin for a family emergency, so our plans got a little bit skewed. We were supposed to actually see this last week, but I did go see it this morning. The theater, local theater by me, is showing it basically for, I want to say, 72 straight hours. They're doing it around the clock, so we got 8:30 in the morning tickets.
Wow.
Yeah, not super early, but good timing, so that way we can get home in time for some football in the afternoon. But yeah, 8:30. The thing that was kind of disappointing though is we saw it at the Bistro Theater, one of those like dine-in theaters, and I was kind of expecting them to have like at least like a breakfast menu or something. You know what I mean? Like be able to get like a breakfast burrito or a skillet. No, they had their full thing, but luckily they had chicken and waffles, so I kind of had a little bit of a sugary breakfast. So you'll have to excuse me if I'm still a little jacked up on the sugar high.
Well, I actually got to catch this thing twice, fellas, and I didn't intend to, but I went yesterday afternoon on a Saturday afternoon. I went like on a 1:30 showing. It was on several screens at one of my local theaters here, so I got into one of the smaller venues. There may be 30 or 40 of us in there, so I got to watch through it, and then I had avoided pretty much any news about the movie going in. I tried to stay as cold as possible. I mean, I'd seen the trailer a few times and stuff, but I didn't really know much of anything about it. And I had gotten one text from like my super Star Wars friend who didn't have a good reaction to it. So that was the only thing I went in with like, really? And I remember coming out of this and I texted you, Nick, and I was like, oh man, this is bad. And another guy that I follow on Twitter, Eric Siska from We Hate Movies, said, everybody that hated this the first time, I promise you go see it a second time, you'll have a different reaction to it just because you'll clear the deck of what you thought it was going to be. And I debated all day, am I going to do that, am I not? So today on Sunday, I finally said, yep, I'm going to go do it. So I went to like a 2:30 showing just a little while ago. I just got out of it and saw it again. And I don't think my rating is going to change any from what I was going to give it to begin with, but I definitely got a different look at it, having second eyes on it. So I think it's cool though that you both have seen it once, so you'll have a different reaction than I did. But that's cool, and so I'm glad we all got to get it in here. And I guess before we go any further, I mean, obviously, spoiler warning. I mean, like we haven't been doing this for 200-something episodes already, but I mean, we're going to spoil the heck out of it. So if you don't want to know, not going to go watch it. If you stayed spoiler free somehow at this point. But I think we need to do a plot summary and then just jump into it. So Kurt, you're up on this one. Tell us what happens in Star Wars Episode VIII: The Last Jedi.
Sure thing. Starting immediately after the events of The Force Awakens, after the Rebels destroy the Starkiller base, the First Order tracks down the Resistance. After a poorly calculated offensive led by Poe Dameron, the Resistance fleet is crippled and General Leia's forces try to run in their one remaining ship. When they make the jump into hyperspace, they realize the First Order has new technology to allow them to track ships in hyperspace. So rather than go to light speed again, Leia's ship proceeds to just fly forward just out of range of the First Order's guns. Meanwhile, Poe, Finn, and newcomer Rose make a plan to track down a code breaker on the other side of the galaxy so as to be able to break into the First Order's flagship, open the door to their tracking device, and allow Leia to jump into hyperspace. Finn and Rose make their way to this distant planet and find the code breaker, only to be arrested and discover that their cellmate, DJ, also happens to be a code breaker who can help them. Meanwhile, Rey is being trained by Luke Skywalker on the remote planet where the Jedi were first created. Rey tries and fails to convince Luke to join the Resistance's cause and instead goes off on her own to battle Kylo Ren. Rey is captured by Kylo Ren's forces and brought before Supreme Leader Snoke, who tries to turn her to the dark side while she is trying to turn Ren to the light. Finn, Rose, DJ, and BB-8 sneak onto Snoke's ship, break into the tracking device only to be captured, and it's revealed that DJ sold them out. Kylo Ren turns on Snoke, killing him with Luke's lightsaber. He and Rey defeat Snoke's elite guards. Rey escapes with Chewie onto the Millennium Falcon as Snoke's ship is destroyed by Leia's ship as it goes into light speed towards it. Rey, Finn, Leia, and Poe and the rebels make a last stand on a nearby planet with an abandoned rebel base. And when all hope seems to be lost, Luke Skywalker appears to battle Kylo Ren, but we find out Luke is actually astral projecting himself from back on his planet to distract the First Order while Leia and the Resistance escapes. We then see Luke watching a sunset as he fades away and seemingly dies as Yoda did. And the last thing we see is a young boy on DJ's planet casually bring a broom into his hands without reaching for it, gazing up at the stars as we see the Force is not gone in the universe after all.
That's a good tight summary for a really freaking long movie. I mean, this is every bit of its 2 hours and 30-minute runtime, and
that's as tight as I could get it.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I didn't know the runtime until literally I was standing in line to buy my ticket, and I happened to look down on my little app, and it was like 2 hours and 32 minutes. I was like, holy cow. I was like, well, skip the drink because I might miss something. And
did you get it with the the Frozen short story in front of it? Because mine was like over 3 hours.
So. See, I did not. I the first time I saw this, I got it with a ton of trailers, so that was probably a 3 hour experience. This time, the showing I went to actually started at 2:20. I walked in the theater at 2:40, and they were showing the Avengers Infinity War trailer, which was the last one before the movie the day before. I actually saw this in the same theater twice, the actual theater. So that was kind of neat. So I knew that going in. So my last minute decision, I was like, I know I got time. So I skipped all the trailer. I did not see the Frozen short, and goodness, this didn't need to be any longer. So as it was, but let's get into it. And one thing I didn't know was that they were going to pick up like moments past the Force Awakens.
Yeah, that was odd.
Yeah, and what did you think of that? I mean, just as a move, just to pick up like, boom, 10 minutes later.
I didn't dislike it, but it did throw me because I am just so used to each of these movies takes place, I don't know about real time, but a couple years or months after the last one. So when we jump forward, it's the first Star Wars movie where we pick up literally the moment we left off. Like Rey, I think it wasn't Rey. She's still pointing the lightsaber at Luke when we cut back to that scene. And, I wouldn't have minded if they, gave us at least a week or a month to, I would have liked it if we picked up with Rey and she was in the middle of training with Luke, but that's not what happened.
See, I liked it because I really don't think there was any other way you could do it that could be satisfying to, let's just say it. I mean, Star Wars are the most hardcore fanboys there are. I don't care what other type of movie or, fan base you're talking about. They are very loyal to a fault, as far as their passion for this goes. And considering the last movie, we didn't even get one line from Luke Skywalker, I think to basically eliminate what would be his first moments as far as talking or interacting with Rey would leave a lot of people just kind of like, oh, I wish we would have saw that. How was their first interaction? Because even if we would have started, let's say, like in the middle of her training, I think there would have been that question too, like, oh, did he just like pick her up right away? Was there a little bit of like, Yoda and Luke, back in Empire, like, hey, I'm not going to train you. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Who are you? So I was a little bit like, whoa, we are picking up right away. But I'm really kind of glad that they did, because I think just from a story standpoint, it did make sense that it would pick up right away.
You making that point, Nick, makes a ton of sense, and I had not thought of that. But you're right. We didn't get anything of Luke, and if they had like put a pause in there, what in the heck were those two dudes standing there looking at each other for a week or something? Because the crawl that they do really explains nothing that we don't already know. Like
it's pretty unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, like I looked at it, I was like, I've read it twice now, and I was like, that didn't, and it makes sense why it doesn't explain anything, because nothing has really happened since the last movie. But it's also like, maybe you should have just skipped it like you did in Rogue One. I mean, I know they couldn't do that because people were losing their friggin' minds over this movie anyway, but they would have really lost it over that. But I mean, for all the things Rian Johnson seems to want to eschew to the side about Star Wars lore, that crawl, the one, at least it was short, but it didn't really serve any purpose to set anything up.
Oh, totally. But I think, but it's such a part of the format. I mean, you look at, I guess the comparison I'm going to use right here, and it's not what I mean in quality, is you look at James Bond when they did the reboot on there with Casino Royale, and Quantum of Solace picked up right after Casino Royale ended. We've never seen that before with the James Bond movie. And one of the main complaints they always had with James Bond, especially the first one, again with the hardcore fanboys, was they didn't go through that formulaic beginning like they did with the, walking around and doing the gunshot barrel and stuff like that. They skipped that with Quantum of Solace, and of course, the people are just they're not going to. They're creatures of habit, and you have to have that in there. I mean, it would be. I remember even with Rogue One, though, as much as like I enjoyed it not doing that and being something completely different, which I always champion. I don't think it would fit for for one of the numbered series. And I think that's how we got to really look at Star Wars, is you got the number main series, and then you got kind of these side stories that are going to do their own thing. So for me, no, I'm glad that they still did it, even though it didn't tell us anything, but it keeps with the consistent flow of how these movies are framed.
I think the other thing too, and Kurt, you and I were talking about this before we started recording tonight, is that I'm getting used to living in a world where I'm going to get a Star Wars movie every year, and I'm going to get episodic ones every 2 years, whereas before, it was every 3 or 4. So, I rewatched Force Awakens maybe 6 or 7 months ago again, just because I just wanted to, and it mostly feel the same about that every time I rewatch it, and stuff, but I'm like, you know what? People have seen that. Like, you don't have to remind them of much. And not only thematically are you picking up right where you left off it, but it hasn't been that long. It's in our consciousness, and so it makes total sense to do that. And while it is keeping with tradition, it is a little bit of a break from tradition in that crawl is supposed to really introduce the story. The story's already been introduced, and let's just face it, guys. Rian Johnson was given carte blanche with, you've got the middle section. Do what you want. They didn't tell him he had to hit any beats. He had to do any things. He could do whatever he wanted, because they know they're going to do episode 9, and then they're going to do, all these things in between, right? We're going to have I can't wait for the Porg spinoff personally. But there's all these things to come. And so they pick us right up with it. And let's talk about Poe's terribly bad plan that leads to that Pyrrhic victory. What a suicide run. And the fact that they got one bomber through there, first off, the Resistance has got to rethink their structural integrity, because when your bomb bidet doors are wide open to be shot at, that's a problem.
Isn't that like a thing? Isn't that like a Star Wars trope though? Is the Empire, or in this case the First Order, are very much sleek, up to the date, and then the Rebels or the Resistance are kind of we got that 1982 Volvo. It's got to where it counts, but it's kind of junky, but it works.
But as we learned, they're all built and sold by the same group of warlords. So, are you just selling the crappy ones to the low-income people?
But that's the same thing though, even with cars. It's hey, you can go buy a GM, you got a Cadillac, and then you got a freaking, a Saturn like they used to sell. They got different classes there for different classes of people. So
I definitely First Order would be driving the Cadillacs, the Resistance would be driving the Pontiacs, right?
Exactly, but that's what it is. Yeah, exactly what it is. The Resistance doesn't have the money that Snoke does. Come on, Snoke's in there with a freaking smooth, gold, robe and stuff. So they got the money.
I was just gonna say, that bomber scene. I do like that bomber scene, by the way. That bit where she's at the bottom of, it's a very, very Star Wars scene of like, something hanging by a millimeter. It just needs to fall an extra bit. It's like a very Indiana Jones kind of thing too. And I actually really like that when she holds that medallion. I don't know if that was meant to be a Jedi thing or not. That's what I got from it, is that she's holding onto it as though she's like using the Force, and then what do you know, it comes into her hand. And I like that. However, I do notice that there didn't seem to be any kind of force field or anything protecting her from the vacuum of space that was right behind her.
Yeah, the rules of vacuum of space in this movie, hold on to that for a minute. We're going to come back to that in like 2 minutes. But yeah, I was like, actually I got this flashback to a Matthew McConaughey movie.
You guys are gonna. I mean, you guys Neil you guys like that Neil that with the guys Tyson or something. We're gonna talk about if this really could happen.
No, we're not gonna do that. I'm gonna tell you what I thought it was ripping off.
Come on.
No, this is what this was ripping off was U-571, where Matthew McConaughey sends Trigger down. You go down there, sailor, and do your job. Drown, turning on the damn air hose so I can fire this last torpedo. That's exactly what that was. That's all
that is a big war trope, though. It's like, I mean, come on, Randy Quaid in Independence Day can't get that last bomb to go off and stuff like that. So it's
yours.
Like that's the thing. It is. But if we're going to talk about the vacuum of space, I mean, come on, that's been a Star Wars trope since it started. I mean, you're going to look at something like Empire Strikes Back, they're in a goddamn space slug inside, and they're walking around in their outer space. So I've been seeing complaints on there, and I'm like, guys, if you're going to start nitpicking and cherry picking stuff like that, you can pick on every Star Wars movie when it comes to space logic. Remember these movies, and I can't stress this enough. These are children's fantasy movies, and we right here, we're fans because we grew up with these.
Well, let's talk about the one thing they do show us though that we've never seen before is when the Kylo Ren and his group swings around to the front of the lead cruiser. They blow out the window where, of course, Leia and Admiral Akbar and all the leadership, or most of the leadership, are on the deck. We've never seen people sucked out into space like that. I mean, we saw like droids and clone troopers in Revenge of the Sith done that way, but we've never seen Leia do what Chris Pratt does in Guardians of the Galaxy and come back to life to force wield himself back through a door.
Yeah, we've never seen that before, but aren't you kind of glad, though, that they are introducing new stuff? You know what I mean? Where it's like, why wouldn't people?
There's a reason for this, though. They're setting up a theme, though, is that it's not just Jedi who can use the Force. And I mean, Leek even calls that out later on, and you pointed it out in the end of your plot summary, Kurt, about that kid grabbing that broom with the Force, is that anybody can learn how to use the Force. So this whole thing is set up to demystify the Jedi, the Force, and everything you think you knew about Star Wars, and that, if you want to tap into it, baby, it's there for you, which seems like such a millennial construct.
Well, I think it's also kind of, in a way, kind of slapping the prequels in the face a little bit, because wasn't it, established in the prequels that you had to basically the prerequisite of having midichlorian levels and stuff like that to be able to use the Force and everything like that. And that's one thing we'll get into later here is when Luke is training Rey, how they just purposely throw that in her face. Like, that doesn't mean shit. Yeah. When they're doing that. And I like that too, because we even saw that in Rogue One. I mean, as we talked about that movie, I mean, go back and listen to our review from a year ago, where we had the blind guy there, and he was obviously some type of Force user, and he had, a little bit of extra level skills. And that's what I like, is that, sometimes, you got people that are just naturally gifted who have these abilities and stuff like that. And maybe they're not as fine-honed and stuff like that as other people who have trained in it, but it's there. And that's what I really like that. And, the Leia scene, I will say this, is that I didn't really care for it. It's one of the two areas that I really kind of was like, oh man, I would have done this a little bit differently if, anybody would pay attention to me if I was making a movie. But I do like what they were going for, was that, this ability is there if you're willing to accept that it's there. So,
well, I'll tell you what it made me think about was I actually did. Some people say that they hated that scene. They thought it was silly. Like people call it the Mary Poppins scene because of the way she's flying through space. I actually thought that was actually pretty cool, that like she, she's the daughter of Darth Vader. She's strong with the Force, and she could do that. I thought that was cool, but at the same time, this happens a couple times throughout the movies, and obviously there's tragically, we lost Carrie Fisher. So, I thought I heard that they didn't finish making the movie. So, and in the trailer, they make it look like Kylo Ren is going to shoot her ship, and they make it look like, okay, so they're going to, in a certain kind of work it into the story. They're going to smoothly transition Carrie Fisher out. And that happened. There's like 2 or 3 different scenes where it's like, okay, I guess this is it. They're like, she's obviously dead. And they kept bringing her back. And I couldn't help but chuckle at that, because it's like, they're just making it, it feels like they're making it so much harder for the next guy, because there's so many times where it's like, okay, she's dead. And now it's just like they've run out of smooth transitions to work her death into the movie. So now the only way to start the next movie is with her funeral.
Right. Well, or maybe Andy Serkis can mocap for her, because as we'll learn in a little bit, he doesn't have anything else to do now. So, I mean, as we get into it, let's talk about, though, we do get back to Rey trying to convince Luke to get back in the fight. And I'm going to tell you, like, when I first saw him do it, I was like, whew, that's not the reaction I expected. Actually, kind of like the snarky-ass humor that Mark Hamill plays this
Love
with.
it.
She hands him that lightsaber, and he's like, F you, and just walks off. And I was like, ooh, Luke's a bitter old man. I was like, wait a minute. You know what I've learned about Jedis in exile? They're all bitter old people. Obi-Wan Kenobi was a bitter old dude. Yoda was a real pain in the ass for about half of Empire Strikes Back. I'm like, no, kind of, and look, Mace Windu was always a bitter dude. So, I mean, these guys, like, they have a real stick up their ass.
They totally do. And one thing we did kind of gloss over a little bit was we do get to run in the Snoke and stuff like that again with Hux and with Kylo Ren in the beginning of the movie. And one thing I do kind of like about this movie was it brought up a lot of the stuff that people didn't like about The Force Awakens. With Snoke was belittling Kylo for, like, you lost in a lightsaber fight against someone who's never used it before, and just sitting there and just ragging on this guy. And, that's something also we'll get into a little bit more is with the development of Kylo Ren and just, he's actually, I think, of all the evil villains that we've had in this movie, the first one that's very understandable, at least from my point of view. But just kind of getting into your thing with, like, Luke and just being able to kind of segue into someone I understand is, Jay, you're older than both of us. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that as a put down at all. I'm just kind of saying it's like a career. And you've been in your career for a long time. And you look at someone like Luke Skywalker, who that's his career. You know what I mean? And it's just been something where, in the end, at least from what we learned later, is like it didn't go real well towards the end. And for me, I thought it was really a nice little fresh of breath air that we got this guy who's not the Alec Guinness. You know what I mean? He's not playing the Obi-Wan Kenobi role that we saw in The New Hope, where it's like, oh, I'm going to train you on this and that. It's kind of like a mixture between kind of like that Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of spunk and then the beginning Yoda that we saw in Empire Strikes Back, where he's real, like, kind of like, screw this. And when he threw that lightsaber, I was laughing. I'm like, yes, that's how I always envisioned Luke. I never envisioned him as like this stoic, bearded, I'm going to be the, who was the Liam Neeson played in the Phantom Menace, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Qui-Gon type guy. Yeah, it's like, this is the guy who was brought into this at a late age. You know what I mean? He lived a poor man. He got into this stuff and he had to kill his freaking father. He killed the father that he never knew. And for what? It all happened again. This guy would be bitter. He's going to be sitting there going, what's the freaking point? I mean, it's like anybody, I think, like if you talk to like any old politician now and they see all this junk that's going on nowadays, not to get too political here, but I could see that totally being the thing. It's like, guys, this is so stupid. It's just cynical. And me being a very, very cynical person, I really related a lot to, especially Luke in this movie, where it's like, you're just going to come here and you're just going to expect me to freaking train you? Who the hell are you? You know what I mean? I left to get away from this crap, and you come and seek me out? I don't freaking know you. I don't want anything to do with you. And I think that makes so much sense, because even something in The Force Awakens, people were sitting there going like, why would Luke leave? Oh my gosh, why would he not be there? And now we know. And that totally makes sense for his character to be like that, as opposed to being like, hey, I'm going to train you and we're going to take this on, as so many people were just doing fan fiction before this. And so, yeah, I just think it's really, really great to see a different type of character in this movie.
I think I want to say something here that may get me on the wrong side of a lot of fanboys who are not happy about this, but I'm going to tell you, the first time I watched this, I was like, boy, I don't know, is this really Luke? And I'll be honest with you guys, I thought, I wanted to think about that for a minute. So I went back and I didn't rewatch them, but I just went back and looked over notes and things that I knew about the previous Star Wars movies that Luke had been in, not Force Awakens, right? And I said, you know what? Luke is an impetuous, emotional guy. And he gets affected by stuff, and he sometimes makes really rash decisions. And I think when Yoda's Force Ghost, we're jumping ahead a good bit here, comes back and kind of scolds him later about, you're always missing what's right in front of you. And I'm like, that's actually pretty true to character. So seeing this a second time, I had a different appreciation for the fact that I'm like, I think Rian Johnson and Mark Hamill worked together to go, you know what? Luke doesn't need to be Alec Guinness. He doesn't need to be Liam Neeson, and he doesn't need to be Darth Vader. He doesn't need to be Yoda. He needs to be what Luke would be as an older guy who, again, all of his work, and it all burned down in front of him. Now, he has some real selective memory as to, and doesn't always tell the entire truth from a certain point of view. Yeah, yep. Exactly. But you can get it out of him just like you can all the other Jedi. And so I on second again, looking at it again, I'm like, I know this is going to be a shock to a lot of people, but this is pretty much exactly how Luke should have gone down, I think. I mean, at least in terms of the way he acts. And I think it's amazing that they never get him off this planet, besides the insidious astral projection that we talked about in the plot summary. So I think it's pretty true to character. So, Kurt, you jump in. We've had our say.
I was just going to say, I think one thing about Luke's role, I do like Luke in this movie. I think Mark Hamill steals the movie with his performance. I thought what he did was very similar to what Harrison Ford did in The Force Awakens, where there was a little like I was like went into Force Awakens and this little bit worried. It's like it's been a long time since he's played this guy, and especially Mark Hamill. It's been a long time since he's just been in a movie, similar to Carrie Fisher. And but I was so relieved that right away I was like, oh my, like Mark Hamill hasn't missed a step. He is not necessarily the same guy, but I thought as far as his acting, he was up to snuff with everyone else in the movie. But his role in the movie, I don't know. It depends on who you ask. I've heard Mark Hamill himself say he's got some issues with how Luke has been handled in these movies. He's been very vocal about his criticism about how Luke was handled in Force Awakens. Like he didn't know until the last second that he really wasn't in the movie, except for one scene. He thought that Luke should have been in the movie. He should have been present when Han was killed, and so should have Leia, as opposed to people that have known him for only 20 minutes, like Finn and Rey. And I thought for the most part, Luke, I like Luke as it kind of reminds me of a Creed. I like the idea of in Creed, Rocky is the new Mickey. And in this, Luke is kind of the new Yoda or the new Obi-Wan. I did like that. However, some of the stuff they did with his character, I didn't like. And the big one is like the whole selective memory thing, where we get into Luke's Jedi Academy, where it's made very clear, and Luke admits to it, that he was this close to murdering his nephew and the son of his best friend. And to me, that was like, that took me out of the movie. It was so dark because I didn't buy that for a second. It's like Luke Skywalker is not a child killer, and he pulled himself out of it.
He wasn't a child though. I mean, you look in there, he was easily a young man, if not college age. So
can I say about that? I'm not disagreeing with you entirely, Kurt, but just going with the character motivation, and then Luke has this whole bit when he's working with Rey and trying to see if she, how she can tap into the Force and all that. And they do have a little hilarious scene where he slaps her with that stick, which I did think was good and funny, because we haven't talked about her yet. Daisy Ridley is who steals the movie for me in this one. She's amazing in this, but we'll get to her in a little bit. But when he's doing that and he talks about how you tapped into the darkness and didn't let it go, Luke's always been able to tap into the dark side of the Force too. We talked about it when we did Return of the Jedi, Kurt, and how just vicious that fight is once he gets super pissed off at Vader, and the way he just goes at him, broadsword style. I was like, Luke has always been scared of how to use the darkness, and I think that's the amazing thing and the cool thing they've done with the Kylo Ren character. And Nick, you mentioned this a minute ago, is that he's not afraid to tap both sides of the fence and use everything he's got to get what he wants. And Rey can do that too, and that is a different level of Jedi. But I think just for the Luke conversation here, this totally makes sense to me. No, he's not a child killer per se, like that may jar people. But the fact that Luke would get really scared and freak out and try to kill somebody because he gets afraid of them, I could totally buy that. Yeah.
Well, how about this? How about this? That's always like one of the questions that's always asked of people. It's like, if you could go kill Hitler as a kid, would you? And I really think that's kind of the question that they were asking here, was that Luke already defeated Hitler, so to speak. The Empire's always been an allegory for the Nazi Party, and he saw it, he beat it, and he's, in his opinion, seeing it happen again. And that's his thing, is like, whether it's his relative or not, Luke has a job to do, and that is, as he said, to keep balance on the Force, and to, and what he was doing at the time was to basically make a whole new Jedi Order. And he's seeing it happen again. This is the same thing that happened with Anakin. Anakin, from what he knows, was a Jedi, and he went bad, and look what happened. And he's seeing it happen again. And we learned too, he did pull out his lightsaber. He had it aimed at him and stuff like that, but he relented. He was questioning himself. It wasn't like he was like, I'm going to kill this guy, and I'm going to, and Kylo just happened to wake up, and, or Ben happened to wake up and stop it. He relented. But again, though, it's that question, though. It's like, if you could kill Hitler as a kid, would you? And I think that's what was going through his mind, is as morally bad as it is to, kill someone when they're sleeping, kill an innocent or something like that. In his mind, it's like, we can't have this happen again. And then it does happen again.
Needs
no
of the
matter
many
what.
outweigh the needs of the fewer the one. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. And that's why I think people have such problem with this movie, especially with some of these, kind of, Star Wars fans that are older, kind of, mine and, our age, Jay, is that the Jedi have always been, except for in the case of Anakin, have always been very one-sided. They don't have many layers to them. It's they're good or they're bad. There's no in-betweens. And the only time Lucas tried to do an in-between, he failed miserably. But, that's what this is we're seeing layers in these characters, something we've really never seen with Star Wars when it comes to the stoic Jedi. They've always been the monks. They've always been the honorable samurai. And to see who I think people have always elevated as like the ultimate good guy are so wrong, because Luke was never that guy. Luke was never Yoda. Luke was never Obi-Wan. Luke was always someone who was balanced. He had darkness within his light. And right here we're seeing the darkness come out of Luke a little bit. And that's what I don't get, is like, when I'm seeing these people complaining, I'm like, have you guys not really ever just looked at this from outside the woods? You know what I mean? It's like, you gotta, you know what I mean? It's just like, I just find it insane. It's like, we're actually having real characters here. And I know that's not Star Wars, but to me, it's refreshing. It really is. And just seeing like Rey and her struggle with Luke and everything like this, I'm like, yes, thank you. I'm like, it's not a 5-minute thing where they finally like, okay, I'm going to train you. It's like, it's got emotion, it's got conflict, it's got people bickering, it's real characters.
I see what you're saying, but I will say I was so taken aback by the image of Luke Skywalker with his lightsaber out, contemplating killing his nephew. I was so taken aback by that I couldn't get into it, because they move on so quickly after that. And also, it just, to me, it didn't seem like the Luke I knew, because at the end of Jedi, he totally shuns the dark side. Like that bit where he's about to kill Vader and he throws the lightsaber aside and tells the Emperor, no, you failed, Your Highness. I'm a Jedi like my father before me. And like, he's totally, he's come full circle, and he's a good guy. And to say that he,
I don't mean to cut you off at all, but like, when we look at this from like what Luke has learned about the Jedi, and I'm going to get really, really deep here, so I do apologize. But like when Luke was learning about the Jedi from Yoda and stuff like that, he really didn't learn about the Jedi per se. And that's one thing I was like, yes, thank you so much, is when Luke was talking about the Jedi and how they were failures, how they let the Empire grow, how they let them succeed because of their arrogance. So yeah, at the end of Jedi, totally makes sense. I'm going to be the good guy. I'm going to be that. But we learned, though, Luke was doing research. Luke was learning what we saw in the prequels, which I think kind of Lucas did accidentally, was that the Jedi themselves were extremely arrogant, and they caused all this by their arrogance. And I think that's why Luke was like, you know what? I'm not going to be them, because they were wrong. And I think that's why he's got all this conflict in him. It's like he wants to be able to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish when he started the Young Jedi, but it's happening again. We can't keep on doing this. This is insanity. We're doing the same thing over and over again, and I'm expecting a different result. That's insanity.
I want to jump in here real quick, just on the Luke on trying to kill Kylo for a second, and then come to the point that you just made, Nick, because I don't entirely disagree with what you're saying. we get the truth of it finally in the third revelation. I mean, there's one version that's Kylo Ren's, which is he wakes up and Luke's trying to kill him, and he's like, F that. And then there's Luke's version, Luke's first version is, I just went to confront him, and then he burned down the house. The real one was Luke pulled the lightsaber out and was going to hit him, and then was like, what the hell am I doing? And stopped. And then he says a great line, and I really caught it the second time, which is all I saw was the look of a boy who had been betrayed by his master. And that was when I knew I had flipped him completely over to the dark side. And Ben reacts exactly the way he has been taught to. Like, forget that, and gets out of it.
But he didn't know that Luke had like second thoughts there. He sees a guy standing over the lightsaber.
That's what I'm saying.
What the hell is he going to do?
Exactly. He's defending himself. He's doing the natural thing. So I get it. And I know it is a jarring way to look at Luke Skywalker. But I think you've really hit on it, and I said it at the beginning, and I'll say it again. Rian Johnson's central theme here is in a line that Kylo Ren says, let the past die, kill it if you have to. And it's the idea of we got to get out with the old and in with the new. We got to burn down the traditions, and they literally do that in this movie. And with the glaring exception of the one actor they actually can't get back. But this movie it doesn't have any real thematic. Look, there's a middle act, and it just is everything goes to hell continually. That's the whole. This could be Star Wars. Everything goes to hell, and that's what it is. But the thesis is we are going to burn down everything that you thought you knew, because you know what? You didn't really know it. And if you really look at it, I mean, you got to go back to an old Billy Joel song called Keeping the Faith, but he's got a great line in it that says, the good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. And in the middle of
always greener, right?
Yeah, in the middle of change, sometimes it can be like that. And I think that's the thesis of this movie. And so it is an affront, and it challenges you. But I'm with you, Nick. I'm excited about the fact that I'm getting a Star Wars movie that I'm not just sitting there vegging through because it's it's sci-fi, space opera, fantasy. It's actually making me think. I didn't expect to have to put my brain into gear to watch this. You go see a Marvel movie. Like, I went and saw Thor Ragnarok. I've seen that twice, and I'm like, man, you can totally turn your brain off and have a blast in that movie. Because that's what it wants you to do. This movie, though, wants you to enjoy all the spectacle, but you're going to have to rethink what you think you know about Jedi and Star Wars and all that. And I will credit them for being bold enough to do that. I don't know that I agree with every decision they made, but at least the impetus was right, I think.
Well, Kurt, let me ask you a question, okay?
Sure.
So I know you right now, it's a lot of it's a shock effect, I think, with you right now. So do you think, though, with, coming to terms with what you saw with Luke and maybe just kind of thinking more from his point of view as opposed to kind of, the EU stuff that kind of came up and, everything with Luke, do you think it might be something, though, within a couple months, years or something like that you may come around to more in the future?
I think I will say that with that element of Luke Skywalker, that is something I could come around to, because like I said, it was so taken aback because it was like something out of The Shining. Because I mean, it's like a father about to kill his kid. It's like if that was
Lukey.
Yeah, it's like if that was just say some random kid. It's the fact that it was his literal blood. That did take me out of it. But I will say I didn't get to see this movie a second time before doing this. I was able to see it twice with the last two Star Wars pods, and I do wish I could see it again just to get past those expectations, because I didn't really have big expectations for this movie because there's been other movies that came out where I had bigger expectations and were a bigger deal. But I do say I will see this again at some point, and I don't know if I'll like it more, but it'll definitely be a different experience.
And I think that's kind of something I've seen really a lot of people have is they were shocked by how it really does kind of change the tropes. And I kind of wrote a quick little post about this too, is kind of what this is really reminding me of. And you guys know I'm a big Game of Thrones fanatic, and really how that took a lot of Tolkien lore and really kind of put it on its head. You know what I mean? It's this is fantasy, the same stuff, but oh my God, they're doing this and they're changing this. And that's really a big draw for that type of series, was they're taking those tropes and they're just completely twisting it around. But I get what people are saying, though. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and people are all going to be subjective with their opinions on this stuff. I mean, that's just how it is. But when it comes to them actually doing it within the same series, Yeah, that's, you know what, that is bold. It's a big risk. I mean, that would be like, hey, WB is going to make a sequel to Lord of the Rings and they're going to kill Aragon within like the first like 20 minutes or something like that, like Ned Stark wise. And people are probably going to have an adverse reaction to it because this is not what I'm used to with this series. I'm used to kind of an A, B, C plot here, and they're going to hit these beats and it's going to be exciting and this and that. But one thing too is like when I would have to imagine that when Empire came out, that was so drastically different than Star Wars. And we didn't have social media back then. We didn't have people giving their second by second reactions when it came out. And I got a feeling though when Empire came out, as much as it was critically hailed, I got a feeling that the audience at the time probably wasn't like, oh my God, this is the best Star Wars movie. They're probably like, wow, this is quite a bit different than what I had.
As someone who was alive and saw that in theaters when it came out, and I was a kid, I can remember what my reaction to it was. My reaction to it was like, holy cow, that was amazing. I can't believe Luke survived that with Darth Vader. What's going to happen next? That movie was built on a different set of arc than this one. Because even though everything goes to hell in that movie, and that's it's supposed to, it ends with that moment where you're like, you know, they're about to gear back up and you know go back on the fight and stuff. So it's a different feel. But you're right. It taps into that.
But you also had a kid perspective though back then.
This is true. I did. Mean? Yes. I mean, we're talking about that was 1983. So that it's been a minute since that was 34 years ago, guys. So it's been a minute since I saw that, but I do remember it directly. And you can go back and listen to mine and Kurt's review that if you would hear more about that. I want to get back into the movie though because we haven't talked about Finn yet. And if there's one thing I wish was different about The Last Jedi, it would be what they do with Finn and John Boyega. I think he's a fantastic actor. I think he plays this role great. And I feel like he gets sent on a fool's errand for the entire movie only to get one good scene finally against his nemesis when he can take out Gwendolyn Christie, Phasma at the end. But I really wish Finn had been given something more interesting to do because all he does is waste his friggin' time. And then at the end, he has a great moment to be a huge hero and some girl he met who shocked him because he was trying to escape falls in love with it. What? I was really like head spun with what they did with him. I felt like if there was one character Rian Johnson didn't know what to do with, it was Finn.
Yeah, I will say Finn, like John Boyega, he is amazing. He was great in Detroit, another movie that came out this year, and he's good in this. I'll say that. Like my problems with the movie, none of them are with the actors. The acting in this movie is first rate, but like the acting and the dialogue is fine, but it is, and this plays into, Finn's role. The story in this movie, like if you just write down, like literally the plot, as I was typing up that plot, I was like, is it me or is this the dullest, most boring plot in a Star Wars movie? Because of like this Finn's story is very connected to, the chase element of the movie. And this chase we get, I don't think it was meant to be funny, but I was chuckling every time we kept cutting back to Leia's ship and they're still going what looks like 10 miles per hour. I just kept thinking of that line in The Simpsons with, damn, they're very slowly getting away. And I thought that was like, I don't know whose idea that was, but I just thought that was kind of laughable. The unbelievably slow pace of that chase compared to like, Mad Max Fury Road where, everyone's going, 90 miles an hour during that entire movie, or Empire Strikes Back where, when the Millennium Falcon has a Star Destroyer behind it, it is gunning through asteroids, it's whipping all over the place. And
or listing lazily to the left.
Exactly. And I thought it was funny. And like, if this was Guardians of the Galaxy or any other movie, they would make fun of that. It's like, because I just kept thinking this happens a lot in the movie of like, that Star Wars thing of like just barely making it. That chase is such, because it's like that takes up like 2 hours of the movie. Is that like they're being chased for 2 hours? I kept thinking, how the hell? Why is the Empire, the First Order? Why are they not hitting the gas? Why are they not launching their
they drop
fighters.
a line. They drop a line that they're faster enough. They're just fast enough to stay just out of our range, General Hux. Fine, keep shelling them anyway. And I'm like, now, there's two things that I have a problem with this. We've never established, and maybe it's time that we do, but we've never established that fuel was a resource that wasn't infinite in Star Wars. So now all of a sudden it is. But somehow ammunition is not. Because the First Order fires about 25 million shots. Now, look, I know a lot about the Navy and like naval warfare. I'm a fan of it. I've grown up watching it, listened to a lot of it. My dad served in the Navy. You don't just keep shelling at things just because you're just out of reach of them, just to let them know you're there. They know you're there. General Hux is a terrible logistician. I mean, he is running up the accounting bill. I mean, there's that joke on Family Guy, like, Jerry, every shot costs us something. Don't do it, And I was sitting here thinking about that. I was like, oh, Seth MacFarlane's going to murder this because it is just dumb. And back to the Finn, though, I feel like he gets given the plot that Obi-Wan Kenobi got in Attack of the Clones when he had to go run down the cloners and stuff. And while some of that was kind of fun, if you remember back to when we reviewed it, it ultimately was just a way to keep him in the movie without letting him do anything. And
it was,
it's the same thing here.
We got this in Attack of the Clones, though. In this offshoot story with Obi-Wan, we got one of the better fights in the store in all the movies with Jango Fett and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Finn gets to ride on a CGI goat, horse, deer thing. And it was a very, very weak plot. And again, this whole thing of like the plot to find a coat of it, I just chuckle thinking about it. Finn's entire role is to find a guy to pick a lock to open a door. And one, that is just lame. It's like what, like they can't spice it up, have him blow up a door. Also, this is the 9th Star Wars movie where we've had nothing but scenes of droids tapping into computers, unlocking doors. And now it's like literally there's the scene where, Benicio del Toro opens it up. It looks like something out of the 70s. There's literally it's this crappy circuit board.
I think the room Matthew Broderick breaks out of in War Games is more complicated than the door he breaks it.
Yeah.
Like it really is. Yeah.
But I do got to bring up a point, though, guys, is every Star Wars movie really does have minus the first one, and I mean that with A New Hope, really do have kind of trouble with what to do with some characters. I mean, even with Empire Strikes Back, we got this whole thing with them hiding in a space slug. Really, it's like, to me, that was just time filler while Luke was training with Yoda. We get a lot of that stuff, even like with Return of the Jedi, like the whole thing on like the Ewok village. That really is like, really, do we?
Let me help you with that, though, Nick. Hold on.
The prequels do that all the time.
Yeah, but wait a minute. The space slug thing that you brought up, I want to say that though, the thing that was doing though, that was advancing the obvious budding relationship between Han and
Which
Leia.
I think that's what they were trying to do, though, with Finn and Rose. Whether it worked with you or not, again.
Yeah, but it did. That's the thing is it didn't. Like, I got that they, like, connected and were friends or whatever and maybe had, like, a similar mindset, like they were working on a goal. But when she pops up in worst on-screen kiss ever, by the way, at the end, when she does it, I'm like, that didn't seem earned at all. Like, there was nothing there. And it's because, too, you got to remember, in A New Hope, Han and Leia had like, tay-to-tay. So this was just a continuation of it in Empire Strikes Back. There's nothing to set this up for Finn, and that's why this feels so perfunctory. That's the word I came up with for this. It's just his whole plot in this movie is perfunctory.
I do not disagree that I think that some of that casino stuff really could have been cut back. I do find it real interesting about this third party out there making money off of this war. I think that's a really, really great thing that they kind of tapped into here. But no, I'll never argue with anybody that I think the middle section, especially with Finn, was I think they could have cut 20 minutes out with that. I think they could have done something where Benicio del Toro was part of the Rebel or the Reliance, and he was the one that was allowing them to track him. You know what I mean? And then you find out in the end, this guy's a double crosser or something. No, I totally agree with that. But I think really kind of what is with Rose is I think her infatuation with Finn, and she kind of said in the beginning, was that, she was hearing him through this, through the pipes, and her sister talked a lot about it. And it's a woman in mourning. And I think in a way that she was just like trying to find some type of
Can we talk about, though, how she deifies him for something that in timeline-wise happened like 3 hours ago? Like that seems to like word got around real fast. Maybe they have space Twitter. I don't know. But I mean, really.
Yeah, they would have to. I mean, my gosh. I mean, how quick are we learning stuff nowadays? You know what I mean? I know when someone just went to the bathroom thanks to Twitter, so I wouldn't doubt it that in this world of light speed and laser swords that, I'm sure someone was using a galactic Twitter going like, hey, this Finn guy's kind of kicking our ass down here on the, one of the stormtroopers being like
the Star Killer
like,
base.
shit.
Like, hope I don't get shot by Finn, by FN 2816. He mopped my floor yesterday.
Exactly, yeah, I'm sure there was stuff like that going on. So
yeah, I mean, we get this. This is another thing. Then this kind of ends up with Act 1, and we can get into Act 2 a little bit here. Is Rey and Kylo conversing through the Force, and I saw someone that called this Force texting, and I kind of like that phrase because I think that's sort of how their conversations go. It would be like text messages back and forth between people, but I sort of like the conceit of that because you got to have the younger generation, right?
Well, we had that set up though. I mean, Luke and Vader had that at the end of Empire, where they were talking with each other.
Yeah, but they weren't like astral projecting to each other's place. Like Rey can see where he's standing around, tells him to put on some clothes, and he's like, I can't see you, but he can feel rain on her face. Like that. There's some neat stuff going on there that we've never really established. Like, are you jumping through a wormhole? What's happening? It's kind of cool. It's just different, but it's a good way to have those two people communicate. And I will say this for any problems I have about this movie, Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley are really, really kinetic together. They have incredible chemistry on screen, and he has a brooding, weird presence. He's just a weird looking dude. But Daisy Ridley can play so fierce, but yet so confident and straight. And I again, can't say how much she carried this for me. Like, her performance is the best thing in the film.
Well, just quickly about the Force texting thing. Like, that has been established with the whole thing of, Anakin could, he can sense like when his mother's in danger, and that bit at the end of Empire when Luke's hanging off of the array there, and he's saying, Leia, hear me, and that great bit where she just kind of, it's not as though she's having a conversation, but you can just sense Luke's in trouble. And it was, I thought it was pretty powerful. But the way Rian Johnson films it, like, because the idea is good, but the way Rian Johnson is filming it took me out of the movie. I thought this is really weird, because it's like, I can't imagine what that looked like. Like, if you could actually see what Rey's doing, it's like, it didn't come off as she's in the same room as him and like they're having a conversation, but it's filmed and framed as though they're talking to each other in the same room. And again, that was one of these things where it was too weird for me to go along with it. It took me out of it. I was like, this is weird to see in a Star Wars movie.
It is a little different for a Star Wars movie, but just how else would you frame that though? I mean, I think that they're talking to each other. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would just say two things. One, my thing is I would just not do it. Or two, I would have them somehow actually communicate like via technology, like via some kind of video phone or something that would give away the whole location of Luke. But I think that would have been my thing is I would just not do it.
But what is she going to do, though? I mean, is he going to send her like a friend request on like Space Facebook or something, being like, we're going to start talking? I mean, like you said, though, they've established these rules before, like I said, like with Luke laying hurt at the end of Empire in bed, and like also like Vader's talking to him and everything like that. They've established that these people can talk with each other through the Force. I think it's just that when they're going to have something that's more than a 5-second snippet of like father. You know what I mean? Like at the end of Empire, I think it's the most logical way of framing it is like these people are talking like they are in the same room, so we're going to frame it like they are in the same room. And I like the contrast that was going back and forth. I like it where she's yelling at him and stuff, and he's kind of, doing it back with them. And it was a great way too, though, that was the whole crust of it, though, was her talking to Kylo and then her talking to Luke, and we're her in these scenes because we're learning this because Kylo and Luke have all the information, and us, just like Rey, are trying to learn this information. So to me, I really enjoyed it, and I love their back. I agree with Jay. I just think their back and forth and their chemistry is phenomenal.
I'll say this, and I will agree that it is jarring to see this the first time, like, because it's so out of. I mean, even though the construct has been there, the way it's done is so different than what we've seen before. But again, on the second viewing and going in realizing Rian Johnson is here to tear down everything we thought we knew about Star Wars and establish things that we hadn't seen before. And he was given the order, you can do that. And he went and did it. And I get it. Like, I see why these two people would carry on like this, whereas before we hadn't seen anybody do it. And so it's a little different. Now, I don't disagree with you, though, that I don't know that it's framed entirely correctly. And the part of it that really gets me is I can see where you are. I can feel where you are. Like, it'd be fine if they were just having these conversations and walking around in different rooms. I think I would have been okay with that. It's that they can almost literally touch each other and all that. Like, when they touch each other in the thing before Luke breaks it up and all that, I was like, that was getting a little beyond maybe what I wanted them to do. I get what they're going for. I didn't care for it as a construct.
But you also got to remember too is that these encounters were also being amplified. This wasn't just their ability.
Yeah, what we learned is Snoke is the one that is doing this. He's connected them on Facebook together. We just didn't know it.
Yeah, yeah. He's playing the matchmaker here. You know what I mean?
So Snoke is Match.com or Farmers Only and
for people that watch people that watch HGTV, he's Chip and Joanna. He's trying to help them, find their house. I mean, he's connecting them. So, but that's what I think. That's what we got to realize here is that it's just not normal Force users here. There's a third one here that's really amplifying this communication. You know what I mean? He's kind of like that. He's the modem booster here. You know what I mean? He's increasing their signal strength.
Yeah, I want to get into him right now, though, and say the biggest disappointment I have with this is that I know nothing more about him than I already knew from the first movie and the trailers of this movie. Like, he's so powerful and so instrumental in the things that are going on here, and of all the things they spend time telling us about and all the things they waste time doing in this movie, we couldn't get 2 minutes to explain who the hell he is and where he comes from.
Snoke?
Yep, he's talking about Snoke. So I want to ask you guys this, though, because you guys were fortunate enough to be able to do the original trilogies and stuff like that. Take the prequels out. Just like slide those away. We have the Emperor. What did you guys know about him at all besides the fact that he was the Emperor in the original trilogy? What do we know about him?
Well, nothing. He was a very fantasy evil sorcerer kind of staple.
Exactly. Well put. And that's exactly what Snoke is the Emperor in the original trilogy was what was going to draw Vader and Luke against each other, and then what was going to bring them together. Snoke is nothing more than that. And I really think what hurt this was the J.J. Abrams mystery box. That's something that's always thrown around there, is that he puts all this mystery around stuff. Like, I'm going to show you a little bit, but I'm not going to tell you. It's going to be saved for later. And I think what happened, and you saw, I mean, how many articles, Kurt, did you read about, like, who could Snoke be? Is this Anakin Skywalker? Is this Darth Plagueis? It's all these things that were built up around it. And in the end, it's like, no, this is just nothing more than the Emperor was in the original trilogy. Yes, we learn more about him because of the prequels and everything like that, but it's the same type of character. He's a force, but he's there to develop the main characters.
Let me jump in and say this here, though. I know what you're talking about, Nick, but I haven't read or watched a single one of those kind of fan theory things, because I know that's a fool's errand. You're wasting your time, because that is not what Abrams and Disney want to do. They'll let you do that all day. So I didn't have any expectations. I just wanted something, just a little bit, to explain what he was. And yes, the Emperor is largely an enigma, but Kurt hit on it. He was an archetype. He was the evil Grand Wizard, and the one thing you knew about him was that Vader was incredibly loyal to him until it finally came down to, his son and life at that point, and the appealing to the light of him. That's all we needed to know about the Emperor, because I'm going to tell you something. When the Emperor goes after Luke in Return of the Jedi, I know exactly what his motivation is. I know what he's doing. I get all of it. I don't know all I know about Snoke was that he seems to be the most powerful Force user we've ever seen, but he totally misreads his apprentice, who cuts him in friggin' half, which was a great scene. But I'm like,
great scene.
But I'm like, again, I just feel like we spend time riding around on space camels through the woods to free them, to make some sort of statement with Benicio del Toro and John Boyega, but we can't get 2 minutes to explain to me who the hell Snoke is something.
But let me ask you this, though, because who is these movies about? Who are the characters that this is about? It's about Kylo Ren or Ben Solo and Rey. He's not important as far as who he is. he is very much like you're saying, like with the Emperor, is that he's just an archetype. That's what he is. We knew that in the original trilogy that Vader was seduced by the dark side, and we could put two and two together that he was seduced by the Emperor. And that's the same thing here, where we learn that Snoke had some type of, effect on Kylo, and that's what happened after he joined him and everything like that. But I think one thing you may have missed in the viewings was when his talking down to Kylo. And I think that Kylo Ren is not Vader. He's not just a dog on a leash. Is that he's he's a crazy guy, you know what I mean? And I think that he was buying his time. As much as like Vader in the end was like, me and Luke, we were let's replace the Emperor and stuff like that. He wasn't so much about, he wanted to replace him, but it was like he wasn't going to wait for his apprentice. He was waiting for his right time. And I think really what drawn him in was that when, again, it was like, oh, I trust you. And then he starts ripping on him again. And I think it was just like, enough is enough with this guy. And I'm going to take this opportunity right here to kill him. And that was what his purpose is in this trilogy, or in these first two movies, was to develop the main bad for the series.
Well,
that's what
I'll say I see that, but this is kind of an overall thing with the entire movie, was that Force Awakens, there was a lot of mystery. Like there were starting threads that I knew they were going to end up, they were going to give you answers in following films. And they all the threads that they set up, I figured would be revealed in the next movie, in episode 9. And they give you the answers to all of them. And I was underwhelmed by every single one of them. I was expecting there to be I think at this point we're all expecting there to be big twists and turns in Star Wars movies, and I was waiting for like a big revelation. I had some in mind. Like I thought Rey's parents. I thought Luke was going to be Rey's father. That's one that they slough aside. But about Snoke, especially in Force Awakens, they created this character out of nowhere. I had so many questions about this guy, like that I didn't have about the Emperor. But I had about this guy. It's like, why did he create the First Order? Why does he care about Darth Vader? And why does he want to kill? Why is he after Luke Skywalker? So many questions. And Rian Johnson just cuts the mic, and now we're not going to get those answers. And if they suddenly start talking about Snoke in the next movie, that's going to be kind of weird, because he's not there anymore. But again, I didn't like. I thought it was genuinely shocking. It was one of the best scenes in the movies, where they kill him out of nowhere. I did not see that coming. But I'm guessing J.J. Abrams didn't see that coming. I would love to ask him. Is that what you think was happening when you came up with that character?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It is a good point.
And I'll just say though, like that to me felt like I didn't realize the first time I saw this, I was like, there's a whole other act to go, because what happens after that, by the way, is the badass scene of the film. All right, when Kylo Ren and Rey team up to take, we've never seen Imperial Guards do shit except stand around and read stuff and look bad, right? When they finally get into that fight with them, that is an incredible lightsaber versus technology battle. I loved every second of that. I ate every bit of that up. I thought that was awesome as a team up, and then the dialogue at the end too, which we'll get to in a second. But when they killed him off like that, I was like, wait a minute, there's another 35 minutes to go with this movie. You just whacked the supreme leader, and I'm kind of like Domhnall Gleeson. I'm like, we have no leader. I'm like, what happened?
But that's the thing though, is I really think that, like I said, like I'm just going to go back to Game of Thrones. It's like I remember like when the three of us talked about that, and like Kurt was like saying like he always envisioned it was going to be Ned Stark, and like Khal Drogo and all this stuff, and all suddenly at the end it's just like, what the hell just happened? Everything that I was led up to believe has just been turned on its head. This is not what I thought. And that's kind of what I'm getting from here, was just like, thank you, there's no Emperor and stuff like that. We saw the actual making of a Darth Vader guy here. We've never seen this before done right. And to me, it was just like, thank you for getting rid of this guy. And now we have the main villain, who's not just this like mysterious, powerful guy. He's layered, and we know what his entire motivation is. I think it was great, and that's really why I like it. And yeah, I mean, Yeah.
I think like Rian Johnson, he definitely, good or bad, he turned Star Wars on its head a little bit. I think it's going to be really awkward when J.J. Abrams comes back and goes right back to the old stuff. Good or bad, it's like, I'm guessing it's going to be, a fun movie because it's Abrams, but it's going to be jarring that I'm guessing none of the Rian Johnson stuff is going to be in episode 9. And I think I definitely thought about that through a lot of this movie. It's like Rian Johnson's going out of his way to make it hard for the next guy. Like I wish it was like either J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson making all three, so we could have a through line. Because I'm guessing it's going to be Return of the Jedi again, where the third movie is way out of sync. It's so completely different from the last movie. Good or bad, it's just going to be like it's going to be different again.
Why do we need a through line, Kurt? I mean, you're a big Batman fan, and you look at Nolan's Batman. There's not really a through line there besides Batman himself, and we have that with Ray. Ray's the through line for this series. Every one of those movies is completely different in how it was. Even shot. I mean, they all feel very different. And don't you think that, like, for a movie like this, I mean, isn't that a big complaint we hear with Marvel is like, you guys are only really telling like half a story, and you guys are just always kind of being like, but wait till next time. You know what I mean?
Right.
But here we get a complete story, and I think, isn't that kind of exciting that we're not able to? We don't know what the hell they're going to do for this episode 9, and I think that's kind of. That's not Star Wars like, where it's like we always had an idea. And I think that's even like with this one, we had an idea of what it was going to be, and when it wasn't like that, it was shocking. And now for Star Wars, we don't know what the hell they're going to do. And I mean, that's my question to both you guys. Don't you find that kind of intriguing for this?
I think what you're talking about, that sensation of being, genuinely surprised by Star Wars and it being such a different experience. That's how I felt with Rogue One that's why I love that movie so much, was that there were moments where it harkened to original Star Wars, but it was such a wild change of pace from what Force Awakens was, or the prequels, or Return of the Jedi, whatever. It felt very much like they were trying to call back to, the battle scenes in Empire Strikes Back, and the battles, like the war tone of that movie. And it's like, and people are saying that about The Last Jedi. It's like, finally, we have a different Star Wars movie. And I'm seeing this not across the board, but I'm definitely seeing people all of a sudden coming out against Rogue One after seeing Last Jedi. And I don't know. I don't really care for that, because I see Rogue One. It's like, that's the one that bad example, but how 7 really was so not an ending anyone saw coming. And that's what Rogue One was, like something I did not see coming that was surprising every step of the way. And it's like, and it was genuinely entertaining and satisfying while being so different. Last Jedi is very different and surprising, but in my opinion, not satisfying.
It's all about trying to jolt us. And I mean, I keep repeating that, and I'm just going to say it again, though. Rian Johnson wanted to pull the rug out from under all of us while we're in the middle of the dance. And whether you like it or not, he was supremely successful in doing that, because what he's delivered is such a different take on an episodic Star Wars film. Take away like Rogue One for a second, like the numbered episodes ones. It's such a different feel, even though it's repeated themes, and you both are bringing those things up, and Nick, you are in particular, and I don't think you're wrong, but he is turning it on its head every chance he gets. And but I will say this: you say there's a story here. The story is that the Resistance has really bad plans that go worse. There are maybe 20 people left at the end of this. That's about as low down and as bad as we've ever seen this group. And they're all sitting around talking about the sparks relit. I'm like, how the hell do you know that? Oh, I forgot, space Twitter. But I mean, really, this is pretty grim, man. I mean, like, at some point, the guy in the back with the funky fish face would be like, "Hey, Poe, I think we may be kind of screwed, bro. We don't have anything anymore. We just got out of a salt mine, and we're on a ship now that has a bunch of birds. on it, and what are we doing? Everybody left is on the Millennium Falcon at the end. It's like the one ship that survived everything, because you can't destroy the Millennium Falcon. I'm surprised they did. Honestly, at one point, I thought Ryan Johnson's going to crash the Millennium Falcon, and Chewie's going to die too, because why the hell not? We got to get rid of everybody else. And that'll probably be the opening of the next one, and that's how they'll kill Leia, now that I've said that. But I mean, really, though, all of that's going on the whole time. The thing is,
Porg's going to eat her.
Yeah, the porgs are going to eat her. But, well, no, Chewie will have to, because he can't eat the porgs, because they cry.
They look delicious, by the way. Those look like
that looked like a Cornish hen. I was down. But getting back into the movie, we haven't talked much about Poe here, Poe Dameron, and I like Oscar Isaac. I think he's really fun, and I like that they play up the Maverick Top Gun, flyboy seat of his pants thing. They do this whole thing with him where you can't just get in the X-wing and blow stuff up. And the first time I saw this movie, I was like, yeah, does he even get anywhere? And I'm like, he actually learned something, because when they're doing that last skid at the end, he's the one that's like, this is a bad idea, guys, call it off. And I'm like, finally, somebody learned something in this movie. He's the one that realizes we got to bug out and fight another day, because it's not going to go anywhere. I thought, and as weird a presence as Laura Dern can be, I thought her and him had some good back and forths in their little scenes together.
I love the twist with her, though. But you go ahead, Kurt.
I was going to say I got to disagree about. First of all, I love Oscar Isaac. As I said in Force Awakens, he is my favorite of all of the new characters they created. He's my favorite. And I was thinking, with the Last Jedi, I really hope he has a lot more screen time, and he does. And he's excellent in the movie. I very much thought it's like if Harrison Ford was in this movie, he would have Poe Dameron's role. It was very much the Han Solo stand-in. But I got to say, Laura Dern is a great actress, but I absolutely hated her character when she steps in for Leia, because Leia demotes Poe after the poorly planned offensive. And when he says to, Poe comes in with his genuinely good ideas of what we should do, and she says, she doesn't listen and just says, wasn't Leia's last order to demote you? And she says, I've seen so many hot shots like you. And I was holding my head in my hands going, what is this, a bad cop movie? Because you're going to ask him for, say one more word of you and you're suspended without pay. It was like, I thought that was
gun in your badge.
Gun in your badge. Like the Frank McRae character in Last Action Hero. And I thought that felt really out of place to have a character it reminded me of Mace Windu, where it's like, this guy just listen, refuses to listen, and it's just, and to me it was like, I kept waiting for Poe to just bail, or I loved it when he tried to take over the ship, but then he got fooled by that. But again, I said, go ahead.
No, but that's the thing though, and I mean, Jay, we talk about work all the time. Isn't this like work though? The bureaucratic state, with a career where it's like, oh my God, we got someone who's new in charge. And it's like, I'm really good at my job, but it's like, they sit there and it's like, they don't take you seriously. Like, yeah, you're lower than me and everything like that. I really like that element, especially when the twist came at the end, because we're so used to that where it's like, yeah, he's the hot shot. He's the Indiana Jones. He's the Han Solo. He knows what's best. And in the end, it's like, wait a minute. No, he doesn't. And that's the reason why. Here's
the thing. They give her a moment they gave her 2 moments to redeem herself, one of which they shouldn't have done. But when she finally, Leia wakes back up and stuns him, and then she puts her hands on his face and she's like, I like him. He's a troublemaker. They have that moment or whatever. When she decides to stay behind, and what we find out is she turns the cruiser back around, hits warp speed, and blows it right through that, big thing, which is a great scene. Cool. But that should not have been her. That should have been the handoff from Carrie Fisher to her to say, you go with him, I'm doing this. That was a mistake. I'm calling it out right now. They should have let that redemption be complete, and then him and her have a different relationship, because, yeah, they don't get along, the new boss and all that, but then they, prove something to each other, and they wind up on the same side. That should have been the handoff right there. They should have let her go on, and then the only reason I think they let Carrie Fisher around is so we can have that end scene where not Luke projection and her have a conversation. which
and they could have they could have done that on the ship or something like that, but then they would blow the whole astral projecting thing.
Exactly, right? Because you would have known, right? So they don't do. So, but then I would say I didn't need the scene that we get with Luke and Leia later on. So we'll get to that in a minute. But do you guys agree with me, Kurt? I'll go to you first. That Laura Dern should have continued on to Episode 9. Leia should have gone down with the ship. That should have been her last move, her last screw you to your First Order.
Oh yeah, like a lot of thoughts on that. Like, one is that as much as I didn't like the character and the interaction with Poe, she did redeem herself in a way where I thought, okay, like I forgave the characters. Like, okay, that is a good character with the way she goes. But like I said, I was talking about like when Leia is shot out into space, I thought, okay, this is the way they're going to very gracefully, with a certain amount of tact, remove Leia from the story, and they didn't. And then when this happened, I thought, oh, Leia's obviously going to be the like the Iron Giant, or like Superman. She's gonna like, no, I'm gonna sacrifice myself to be the ultimate leader. I thought that would be a great moment for Leia, and it didn't happen again. I was like, that is because again, also Laura Dern, she would have been a good stand-in for Leia. And just on a side note, that scene I can't overstate it. That is one of that. I'd really have to think about it. That's got to be in the top 2 or 3 best visual effects moments in the entire Star Wars series.
Oh, agree.
When they cut out the sound, because that was actually the one Rian Johnson, like a weird thing of like the kind of like the freeze frame, that kind of slow-mo where, light speed, dead silence, and we just cut to this is what is being done to the ship in this one instant. I thought, like, literally the audience went dead silent, and there were like 3 or 4 people that literally said wow out loud. And like I was almost one of them, because that was breathtaking. Reminded me of some of the great effects in Interstellar, where it was just like, that was unbelievable.
My afternoon theaters, I'll tell you, both of them clapped audibly at that moment.
Yeah,
because it was such a cut. Yeah,
it was that one in the Snoke scene that got the biggest reaction. But again, though, I think you guys are viewing this from, we know what's going on outside of the movie, that Carrie Fisher unfortunately passed away. Now, I think that what they did is they had a through line for Carrie Fisher's character, that Princess Leia was going to have a big part of Episode 9, and that's what they said. And when her untimely passing did come, I think that it was just too far along in the process where they're like, well, we're going to go back and change it. Yeah, they probably could have, but I think to respect the work that she did at the time, they weren't going to go back there and reshoot her stuff and eliminate her because of her death. I think it was done out of respect, that they wanted her to be able to have that scene with Luke, and then to be able to show not only Luke passing at the end of this movie, but to have Carrie Fisher and have all of them die within this movie, I think in a way would have possibly been too much, because that's always something that we always hear a complaint about, is that, well, Han Solo never got to meet Luke again and stuff like that. And I'm always like, why do you need more of that? You have the original 3 movies. You can go back and relive those. What more do those 2 have to say? You know what I mean? It's always like, well, you want them to sit there and talk about Ben Solo and I failed you and stuff. I mean, it's like, people just seem to like always want to just, that's not what I want. And they're always judging it based upon what they wanted as opposed to what the movie gave us. But
I'm saying, even thematically, though, like, it would have made total sense, not just because Carrie Fisher died in real life. I'm actually saying as a storyline, it would have made complete sense, because she even has a line like, too many goodbyes for me. Like, that, it would have made total sense for, I've now passed on my hotshot guy that needs a little reining in to the one person I know can rein him in. Go take care of this. Lead the resistance. I'm going to go take out that ship. Like, that would have made character sense. I know it would have been jarring to kill 2 main characters in the movie. We killed Han last movie. We got to get rid of him anyway. We know that's what this is. This trilogy is the handoff to the new cast. So why not do it? I'm not saying because Carrie Fisher died you needed to do it. I'm saying as a character, that would have been a better role for Leia to have done, and let Holdo go on forward.
But to me, though, that plan, though, was not Princess Leia. Princess Leia was in a coma. She was out. That was her plan, and she saw it through. Her mission was to get those people off that ship. And for her to get them safe, she had to do that. Her mission, that was her entire purpose, was, I'm going to lead. Yeah, all you hot shots are not going to like what I'm going to do, but my goal is to get you guys out of here alive. And that was her last thing, was that she was fulfilling her mission. That wasn't Princess Leia's mission. Princess Leia was out and about, was done, was not there. that was her mission. She stepped in, she took command, and she went down with the ship. And that's why I think it fit better for her, is because she's your captain. She went down with the ship, and she was the one that made sure that those people got to that planet safely as they could. So.
Well, and also when I keep saying I kept thinking that she was going to die, it wasn't like thematically I thought they're going to kill Leia. I'm talking literally from a practical filmmaking standpoint. I was thinking, how much did they actually? I was thinking I was kind of taken out of the movie because I kept thinking, when an actor dies in a movie while they're making it, I can't help but think, how much of this is like reshot? Did they use a stand-in? And from the looks of the movie, it looks like she shot every scene she needed to shoot, and she survived the making of the movie. But I do think if they were going to let Leia die like that, it would have been, as far as like the main characters, it would have been maybe the most badass death scene in the entire series.
That's the thing I'm getting at, is like, that is the kind of ballsy thing Leia Organa would have done.
It would have been by far. It would have been across the entire series. It would have been the number one Princess Leia moment in the entire series. And also,
you also got to remember, though, her son is still out there, and I think in a way she still has hope. And I think
even though she says that she doesn't. So.
Well, she later, but she later does get on the planet and stuff like that. And I think it was something where Luke, that was kind of her finally admitting it to Luke. But I think at the time, though, I don't think it was. You know what I mean? She's got all this going on and everything. I think even the audience would say there too, let's pretend like Carrie Fisher is still with us, where I think they'd be like, oh, if she did that, where it'd be like, well, come on, she doesn't care about her son, care about what's gonna, her son's doing out there. She needs to, try to take him, try to lead people to take him out. That's her responsibility. You know what I mean? There would have been arguments like that, I believe.
And also on a side note, just like that, that visual effects scene and the use of hyperspace as a weapon is such a genius, kamikaze thing. And it's like probably the best moment in the whole movie. But again, bring me coming back to this idea of this plot of the slowest chase ever. And they don't tell you at the start. They tell you right before that scene, by the way, we have escape pods for every man, woman, and child on the ship. I could not help but think, why did no one come up with this immediately? You could have taken out their ship in the very first scene when you realize, well, we can't jump, so maybe we should do this. Because again, the perfect ending to this extremely slow chase could have been thought of way before that.
But I think the whole point of that was that when they're going hyperspace and everything. I think for the way I was taking it was they were getting hyperspace and they get out, and then all of a sudden they would show back up, and then they'd get in hyperspace, and they're trying to lose them kind of like almost like a rope-a-dope method, where it's like, we're going to draw them in and try to get out of here. And I think that they were just trying to hold on until the last moment. And I think it was something where, I get what you're saying, where it's why did they try
fuel was an infinite, is now a finite resource, they could have done the Top Gun thing, let them get close and let them fly right by. And gone backward. I mean, I called that out, and I want to ask you too, are you okay with that is now a thing, that fuel is not infinite? Because it has been for every other movie in the series.
I thought that was a really weird thing to suddenly introduce, is the idea of running out of gas in a Star Wars movie, because they didn't mention it. I just assumed it's some kind of nuclear power, it's solar power, it's some infinite supply. So when you introduce the idea of running out of gas, to me that was a lame thing to introduce into a Star Wars movie. Like, that's like bringing it down too I don't know how to describe it. That's way too basic a thing to introduce the idea of we're out of gas.
Yeah.
I suppose, though, but we've seen stuff like this before, though, in the movies, where like the hyperdrive's down, or we can't do this, or we can't do this, and it's always like the fight against the technology to stay ahead, and just kind of like the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dam. You know what I mean? We're just trying to do every little thing we can.
We literally get that in this one with BB-8 and that friggin' X-wing, by the way.
Yeah, which BB-8's cute. So, but anyways, but I think that's really what it is that they're trying to. Just try to, bring in something a little bit different than just being like, oh my God, they blew up the hyperdrive, and we only can use this like 3 more times before it blows or something. I mean, they could have done it 101 different ways as far as that goes, but to me, that was never an issue. I always took it that way.
That little rewrite you just did, by the way, makes so much more sense and fits so much more in the way they do. I would have totally
I've been arguing about this for a while, that I need to be doing like script doctor work in Hollywood, because I think pretty much all my ideas are Oscar worthy.
I don't know about that, but yeah, you do have good rewrites on this show from time to time. So I want to go back to something that I threw out there because I heard audible reactions to it when I said it. I thought the Kylo Ren Rey team up in Snoke's throne room after he gets cut in half and they go after the Imperial Guards was friggin' awesome. Kurt, you seem to have a different thing on that.
I thought it was a little hokey to have. It felt like something more along the lines of Power Rangers, and it's like I couldn't put my finger on it until like this morning. I thought, what is it about this scene I'm not digging? And it's like it hit me. It's like it reminded me of the scene in season 5 of Game of Thrones where Bronn and Jaime fight the Sand Snakes, Oberyn Martell's daughters, which is one of the lamest scenes in the series. And the internet, this is an internet comment I saw, on YouTube that said they each have a different weapon. What is this? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Like it was silly in a series that was, very grounded.
Kurt, you do know that those were the Knights of the Ren, right? And that we had that established that they all had different weapons in the last movie, right?
I do, but honestly, if those were if those like just make them lightsabers, I would have liked it more because it was a little hokey. I also, this is on a side note, I don't like the costume design on the stormtroopers and the Knights of Ren. Their outfits are way too shiny, and I don't know if they are cheap, but they look like cheaper than just like the kind of like the more opaque look of the stormtroopers.
But with any military thing though, it's like, you ever seen like military ceremonies or stuff like that? I'm not saying their uniforms look cheap. I'm just saying that what they wear is not battle fatigue, and that these guys were, yes, they're carrying weapons, but these guys aren't in battle. They're just decorations for this guy. Yes,
kind of like the Buckingham Palace guards is what you're saying?
Exactly. Then that's what they are, is like, yeah, these guys are soldiers, they're trained and everything like that. But really what it is it's an intimidation level with these guys. You're going to come in there and you got the whole red room and you got guys that are spiked and red and everything like that. Doesn't mean that they're battle ready and stuff like that. It's an intimidation factor when you come into that area.
I want to tell you why I liked it so much again, though, and it's not so much that the action was so grand, because it's nothing I haven't seen before. You're right, Kurt. It looks like something out of a Power Rangers, out of 50, 11 of the things I've seen. It is our performers. It's Adam Driver. It's Daisy Ridley. The way they tag team together is really good. And you got to understand, I'm a Buffy fan, right? And an Angel fan. And there's lots of times in those shows where they get two people together who have to, do the enemy, my enemy is my friend thing and tag team and fight a lot. And it's always awesome. And it's awesome because the characters and the performers are working off of all the chemistry they've got together, the yin and yang of it. And
It's like Stone Cold teaming up with the Undertaker.
There you go.
Like
Thank you.
Like,
yes, it's great. It is that. It's that. Or to hurt your soul, Nick. It's Sanaa Lathan and the Predator taking on the aliens. That's what it is. I
is
get
low.
that. But it's the same construct. But again, and that's a bad version of it. The performers carried on, and I gotta say that scene when we get the Rey's parents revealed or something, I actually am going to credit Rian Johnson for doing the not obvious, for saying they were nobodies and it. And Kylo Ren is telling her, you're nothing. You don't matter in any of this, but you matter to me. And the way he says it, it's like, I don't think he's lying. I think he's being honest. I think he's earnest. I really, really loved that at the end. I thought it was a great, and then when they have the force pull off to break the lightsaber, that was friggin' awesome.
The idea of Rey's parents, being nobody, and she is just, a random civilian, totally random person, kind of like what Han Solo was, just another person. I would have been fine with that if they just said that in the first movie and said she really is nobody. But it felt like they were building up that her parents were going to be a big deal, and to have the payoff be no, they weren't a big deal, and we should have just not.
Can I tell you? I think JJ probably thought they should be, and I think Rian Johnson said, I can really do what I want. All right, F that.
Oh yeah,
I
exactly.
Really think that's what he did. Yeah.
Exactly
But who's to say? But who's to say though that is true? You know what I mean? It could be Kylo Ren playing something.
Guys, we got to remember Rian Johnson's the guy that gave us Ozymandias on Breaking Bad. Talk about deconstructing things. I mean, that's
for sure.
That is his MO.
But here's the thing, though, is like I think that was something that J.J. Abrams probably should have done. I think if it would have been better if it would have just shown like she was sold off for essentially what it sounded like drug money, you know what I mean, for her parents. And I think that would have been better. But really, I mean, that was always one of the things like people were complaining about The Force Awakens. Like, oh, wait, we're going to find out she's Luke Skywalker's daughter. Oh, wait till he finds out it's Han Solo and Leia's other daughter. And Han Solo didn't say anything. Or even like, oh, what if she's Obi-Wan Kenobi's daughter? Or if she's a Force child like Anakin was, or it's people had all these theories and everything when it came to it. And you know what? Maybe one of those will actually turn out to be true. Maybe Kylo Ren was doing this to be able to bring her down, just to bring her up. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you're nobody, but you're someone to me. Come join me. You know what I mean? Kind of a way to be like, you know what I mean? You bring someone down to prop them back up in a way. So maybe it does turn out to be something different. But I think that really J.J. Abrams really put Rian Johnson or whoever would have directed this in a no-win situation, because I don't think it would have been satisfying no matter what they did.
Well, like I said, like we get a build-up and a payoff that's kind of a little. I thought it was a little bit of a hollow thud of a payoff, where I think she would have been a better character if in the first movie she's like, yeah, I'm a person who was totally just abandoned by my parents, and I've had to toughen myself up. But by having those scenes in Force Awakens where she's got making a notch on the wall, she's got thousands of notches for every day that passes where she is has been abandoned by her parents. Again, it feels like they've been building up to something. And again, like I'm talking about, Lawrence Kasdan and J.J. Abrams while watching this movie going, oh, I can't believe he did that. And J.J. Abrams, because he's making the next movie, I feel like they're going to make a reveal out of Rey's parents, almost as like a revenge for Rian Johnson, like to clean up. Okay, they kind of screwed. Like that's not what we wanted to do with Rey's parents. Like, or who knows? Maybe Abrams is totally in on this, and half of it was his idea.
Yeah, I mean, we do talk about like he's still executive producing this. He was still involved. He was completely aware. He was one of the people, along with Kathleen Kennedy, saying, "Go for it." I mean, look, J.J. Abrams has no problem turning things on its head. Go look at those Star Trek movies. I mean, he completely flipped that series.
When you watch The Force Awakens, though, I mean, we do get little flashbacks of her as a child, and you see the ship going away.
I told you, I liked it. I thought it was a great reveal because, again, I didn't think it even mattered. And because they've gone out of their way, Luke has this whole thing with her, and you called it out, where it was about, look, the Jedi were so arrogant. They thought they were the only ones that could touch the Force. That's garbage. That's bullcrap. Everybody can do this if you want to. And even when Yoda burns down the tree of life or whatever the hell, they're in the middle of it with him. He's like, this should have ended a long time ago. Did you ever read those? Page turners, they were not. I mean, that's just a great line, and I love the fact that they got the actual puppet again, too. But the point is that you got to, I like that they completely say, no, she was a nobody. But the point was, so Kylo Ren could say, but you're not a nobody to me, damn it. Come over here and I'm not even talking about being on the dark side, the light side. We're just going to be on the side. That's what he's saying. And that's what I find so interesting about him and what they've done with him is that he's like, I'm just going to rule it all. Screw light, dark, left, right. Who cares?
Yeah, he's kind of like the Prince Charming to her, like her Cinderella, where it's like, you came from nothing, but I'm going to take you. You know what I mean? I'm going to take you out of this. But no, I do like that she came from nothing. I mean, thank you for not making this universe smaller like Lucas did in all those prequels, where it was just like everybody's related, everybody lives on the same block, even though we're in the vastness of space. It's, like I said, it's like if it would have been something where it was Luke Skywalker's, well, why did he abandon her? Or Han Solo, why didn't he recognize her? It's like, why needlessly shrink down the universe? But that's what it is. I think it's just, it's today. You know what I mean? She's not from royalty. She's a nobody.
I'm hearing what you're saying, Kurt, by the way, too. Not because you haven't, but I'm hearing what you're saying, Kurt. I get it. It is another jar in this because we were set up to think it was going to be so much more. But again, the theme of this movie is that those expectations will just fool you every time. And
I will say, I was actually relieved that she wasn't Luke's daughter, because that would mean you have to introduce Luke's wife. I was relieved that she wasn't Han Solo's daughter, but I did think I'm relieved that it's actually a very nice piece of character detail that she is just someone her parents are just kind of monsters that literally just abandon her, and that absolutely makes her a better character. It might make Force Awakens a little bit better next time I watch it, but I'm just saying like they were building up to a reveal, and the reveal, while the information made the character better, I thought it was a little bit of really, that's it? Because that's something that could have been settled in the first movie, without a reveal, just say I was abandoned.
I want to tell you who I got a kick out of in this, though, is General Hux, because once he comes into the throne room and sees the carnage left behind and Kylo Ren's knocked out on the floor, his first instinct is, well, I'm putting one in his head and moving on. What a pure military guy's like, well, let me go ahead and finish this. You can tell, that's coming to something. I mean, he ended up being the butt of a lot of jokes in the movie, but he also got some good lines in. When they pound the ammunition at Luke's projection later, it's like, do you think you got him? I like the fact that his first instinct was, well, I'm going to shoot this guy, because that's what he should do at that point. Everything's gone to hell. Well, I got to kill this dude so we can get out of here. I did get a kick out of that, and I thought he had a good moment. But what did y'all make of that? The way that he gets put to his knees pretty quick too by Kylo Ren. He's like, "Excuse me, the Supreme Leader's dead."
I thought it was that was one thing I liked about from the stories, the way they handled Hux and Domhnall Gleeson, because like I said about Force Awakens, if I had to pick one thing that the one thing I thought sucked, it was Hux. I think Domhnall Gleeson is actually an excellent actor. Watch About Time or The Revenant. He's a terrific actor. But I thought he was terrible in The Force Awakens. It was so over the top and campy. So I like that they went forward with that and just made him a joke in this movie. I thought that was refreshing. And I thought it was genuinely satisfying to see Kylo Ren just assert control. Because it reminded me of, the relationship between Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin in the first movie. There was a part of me that's like, really, Darth Vader's taking orders from this guy? So it was satisfying in Empire to see, Vader's in charge. It was a similar thing of the satisfaction of Kylo Ren is going to just take charge and be the scary guy, not have to take orders. That was refreshing.
Yeah, I liked it too. I agree with Kurt. I think it's he is over the top. He is a Nazi from an Indiana Jones movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But I think it's great. I mean, we've seen the Tarkin types. We've seen these calculated, Shakespearean British actors come in there and do that. And I kind of like it that he's just like this over the top crazy guy. And then exactly how Kurt put it, where it's like, finally there's no emperor there and Vader's done taking Tarkin's crap. And it's like, listen, man, I'm the new emperor. And I love too that after this, what do they call Kylo? Supreme Leader.
Well,
when he force choked him, that was the only thing that was missing. They should have played the Empire theme there, because that I forgot about that until just now. Yeah. That's one of my favorite moments when because he goes full Vader, now he's in charge. He's going for the dark side, and that was a nice bit when he force choked.
Yeah, because they do a lot of musical cue-backs in this. That is one that was missed. I'm glad you called that out, because I thought it too, Kurt. They should have done that at that moment. He gets when the thing about Domhnall Gleeson, you're right, he plays everything to 11 in these two movies. But he gets some scenes when they're on the mineral planet where he dials it back, and he's almost Ewan McGregor. In a couple of scenes like that, did you think you got him? And all that stuff. Or when he's imploring with him, Supreme Leader, don't go down there and fool with that right now. We're at the verge of winning this. Let's end it. I got a little Ewan McGregor off of him there, and I was like, oh, that's kind of nice.
I will say this though, me being in the business world and everything like that, I'm not going to say whether it's this current job or my last job for obvious reasons, but I've had some. I'm not going to say managers or people above me or something like that who have this, I'm going to be out there and going to give this speech and do this stuff. And it is kind of eye rolling, being like, my God, you're just trying to be intimidating right now. And it's kind of a joke, but that's what I'll say.
I was just going to say that Domhnall Gleeson gives a better performance in this. And that comes back to my thing, because some of the acting in Force Awakens some of it was questionable. Like the Lupita Nyong'o character, I thought was a little hammy. But like I said, that is one thing that I think improves upon with this movie is the acting overall is just better because Rian Johnson. It's weird. He takes the movie into weird places with some of the effects and the story, but the performances are a lot more grounded and real.
Well, can we talk about Kelly Marie Tran for a minute? Because it's a good time to introduce Rose into this because her and Finn crash back into the mineral mine at this point. They're kind of the last thing coming through the door before the big showdown here at the end. What did y'all make of Rose as a character and as a foil to Finn? I know we've talked about that was supposed to be Han and Leia stuff, but I didn't really get that between the two of them.
I think the actress is fine. She did a nice job with the performance, but I thought the character was not good. That is a character. They created a character to give Finn someone to talk to. It did not come off as like this is a new, Star Wars character. It just came off as like, well, we can't have Finn just talk to BB-8, and so we need to give Finn someone to talk to. And it didn't come off as like a really great romantic part, like the interplay between Han and Leia. I didn't get that at all. It just came off as like a weird way to introduce this new character. Who knows where they're going to take her? But like we said, like the bit at the end where but right before it looks like she dies, but then they say no, she's still alive. They didn't earn that moment. The character was not good enough to earn a death like that.
Yeah, that to me, it's the weakest part of the movie. It was everything with the casino planet and really Finn and Rose's plot. I think that was kind of, they had what exactly they wanted to do with Rey. They had exactly what they wanted to do with Ben Solo. They had exactly what they wanted to do with like Princess Leia and Poe and everything like that. And I think Finn was kind of, well, what do we do with this? And I think they really kind of wrote this plot and everything like with her and him kind of around it. Now, it doesn't mean I didn't like it. I just think I think it's the weakest part of the movie. And I will say this, they fooled me again. I mean, let me know if you guys were fooled as well. But when Finn is going kamikaze, so what happens here is they're all held hostage, or they're all held up on this base, a lot like Hoth. And the First Order is sending it down its at walkers, and they have this big battering ram is what they're calling it, and it's going to blow a hole to open up to allow the First Order to go in there and kill the rest of the Resistance. And as it's charging up, Finn is driving full blast at it, and you think he's going to pull I guess for lack of any other comparison, Randy Quaid in Independence Day, where he's going to crash right into it to kill it. And I was fooled. I mean, they had the beats going, they had the music swelling, they had everything, and then all of a sudden she crashes and hits him out of there. So were you guys fooled with that as well?
Completely.
I think
I was totally fooled.
If this was episode 9, I would have been thinking, oh, Finn's about to die, because I thought it was a really nice moment, a great bit for Finn that he's willing to do that. But because I definitely got the sense like this isn't Rogue One, they're not going to do that. They're not going to kill off these characters. And I was also feeling that sensation of, as good as a moment as it would be, I was like, they better not kill off like of the 3, like there's only a couple characters left, and like they better not kill off John Boyega, because he's one of the best things in these 2 movies. So I was, but it was a 50-50. I was thinking this is actually, it was a 50-50 thing. That he might die, but
can I tell you why I thought they would do it? It's because he's supposed to be. I know we say Dameron's supposed to be Han Solo, but there's a little mix of it. Finn has also got a little Han in him too, and I kind of feel like he had his, it was a short one, but he got his revenge on his ultimate nemesis, Phasma. He killed her, which, I wish that fight scene had been a little longer, but sorry, Gwendolyn. But anyway, we get that. I thought he's like Han Solo, or like Harrison Ford always talked about Han Solo at the end of Empire Strikes Back. He ain't got no mama, he ain't got no papa, he ain't nobody. He should go down doing something heroic. And I'm like, you know what? I would have liked it. I mean, again, if a movie's going to be a game changer, and this one purports to be that would have been a real game changer to blow away one of our new 3 main characters here, which we really have 4. But, I mean, to take him out would have been bold. Now, they didn't do it. And I'm going to tell you, though, I hate the clunky line that Rose has to lay at him. He said, we're not going to win by killing what we hate. We're going to win saving what we love. Smooch, let me pass out. I was like, oh, that was a friggin' Hallmark card line. That was awful.
Because there is a war going on. They're literally shooting at us. I think guns might be in order.
Things. Yes. Your Vice Admiral just killed about 1 million people. All right. You are going to kill people you hate. That is so again, so Hallmark. I just like that didn't fit the tone at all. I hated it. I mean, I'm glad he's alive because I like John Boyega and I like the Finn character, but I hated that she couldn't have just said like, no, we got to live to fight another day. We need you. Like that would have been cheesy, but at least it would have been better than what she said to him.
I also think it's odd that nobody does the sacrifice. When she knocked him out of the way, I thought they're doing a bait and switch. She's going to drive into the thing and sacrifice herself.
That would have made sense.
Then nobody does it.
Yeah, if she would have done it, that would have been, again, a full arc of that character because who the hell is she?
The think pieces, though, that would have happened with that, guys, come on. That would have been a disaster. I don't care if I'm PC or not. Having the only Asian character do a kamikaze thing into there. There would be so many. No, yeah, but I'm not trying to be funny.
I thought about it like that.
Yes. Oh my God. I can just see all the freaking movie websites writing think pieces of just no, you couldn't have done that in that nowadays.
You know what? I did not think of it like that, but you're right. That's probably why it didn't happen. But I didn't need. If she had just done the act and he survives and we don't get the cheese line, I would have probably just passed it off and be like, okay, well, good, Finn lived. That's fine.
But I think the reason they included that line was you really look at like Kylo Ren and Ben Solo, and what is his motivation? It's just hate. He hates it all. And I think that's kind of what it is, where it's like I
disagree with that, Nick. I don't think he does. Because, I mean, Rey calls out, like, why did you hate your father so much? And he's like, I didn't hate him. He was like, I just am not going to stand for the way things were. I think Kylo Ren is a complete revolutionary. I think his idea is I am not going to be what my parents and all the previous wanted to be. Yeah, he hates the establishment. Yeah.
Yes, and I think me and you have had conversations like that with politics, where it's just like, my God, just tear it all up. My God, it's both sides are just poison, and it's just like and that's what it is. And I think that's kind of what Kylo Ren's character does basically represent, is kind of that new age political thing where it's like, yeah, you got your side over here and your side over here, and they're always fighting. And guess what? They're both wrong. They're both morons. They both need to go away. And that was, I guess, another part of the movie, though, I really, really liked. I'm like, thank you for doing something, having a character here that's just different.
I want to talk about a visual thing that I haven't called out much about the visuals in this movie, but I really liked the fact that like the salt turned red when you walked on it, even though that gives away a big tell later and stuff. But the speeder things, the skidders going along with this red, all that red dust flying behind them, I did think that looked really cool.
That was gorgeous.
Looked amazing. And that was such a great way for them to bring in basically the elements of, let's say hard R-rated, like Saving Private Ryan war movies, without it being blood. Because at the end, with all the red everywhere, that's what they were getting at, was like, you know what I mean? This is like the spoils of war, where it's just a death and destruction without basically causing the movie to be rated R. Kurt?
Well, no, I mean, you said it. It was, I thought, just on a level. The idea of underneath all this white is red. It was just a good visual. Although I kept thinking, I kept thinking the battle was going to be a lot longer and like going all over the place. And I thought, God, that's got to be a pain in the ass to keep up the continuity of the dust that's being blown up.
Probably why it wasn't longer. Honestly, the animation of that is fascinating. And I thought that looked really good. It was neat. There was a lot of tension, and we do get Poe has a full circle where he realizes, no, you know what? Another balls out to the wall mission. That no, we can't keep taking losses like this. We got to turn back. Too bad he figured that out when there's like 12 people left. But whatever. I mean, he finally learned. So I guess it takes things to get to that. But we get Luke showing up, and we've talked enough about him and Leia's scene or whatever. I'm gonna tell y'all. I hate to sound pompous in this. At no time did I think that was really him. And I want to tell you, there's three things that said it to me. All right? Because we'd already set aside that you can force project yourself into places with the Ren and Kylo conversations, the force texting and FaceTiming or whatever we want to call that, force FaceTime. And he looked different. I mean, he looked like what Kylo Ren would have last saw him as, and we had seen enough of Luke to know he didn't stop at the great clips on his way over to get ready for this, all right? So and when Kylo Ren slides his foot on that salt and the red happens, and in the first turn, Luke turns around and moves his foot, and it's white underneath him, I'm like, I think it would have been cooler if Kylo Ren would have been like, hold on a minute. and figured it out then? Because I knew then I was like, he ain't there.
I thought I did when he showed up. Actually, when he showed up and he took his hood off and he had brown hair, what I was thinking was, this is the shittiest continuity error in the history of film. Like they must have filmed this first, or this is the worst reshooting. But I think it was, I can't remember. I think it was when they started firing at him. This whole set piece is like, next to the, the hyperspace jump. This is probably the next, the best thing in the movie. This is where my heart did start to get racing. Thinking this is going to be badass. That's why my heart got racing, because I thought Luke is here and he is going to use the Force in a way we've never seen. I thought he was going to literally just, push his hand out and every single walker was going to just fall over. I was really thinking some really insane stuff was going to happen. And I thought it was gorgeous when they fired on him and he steps aside and he's totally unharmed. And that was a gorgeous bit where he just kind of just brushes his shoulder off as though like that's all you did. I thought that was hilarious. That was one of my favorite. That was the Luke Skywalker I knew. He wasn't exactly that cocky, but I thought that was funny. But at the same time, I thought it's pretty cool that he wasn't there. But the fact that he dies and that he's never going to be there, it's like that to me was pretty anticlimactic. Like that's how you're going to kill Luke. It's like that's his big send off is.
Goes out in peace instead of going out in conflict.
Yeah, it's like I thought. Well, first of all, I would say what Luke doesn't have to die, does he? It's like I keep thinking. I thought this movie was going to end like Luke is finally going to hop in that X-wing. That's another thing. I thought here comes the X-wing and he's going to start taking out walkers by himself, and that didn't happen. So it was a combination of it was really cool, the astral projection. But when I think of what they could have done, like I thought they were going to do another Darth Vader Rogue One thing where it's like you're going to see like a Sith or a Jedi, you're going to see them tear shit up, and that doesn't happen. It was a nice character moment, but I thought that's a little anticlimactic.
But I called you Luke there for a second, but Kurt. Again, though, this isn't Luke's story. Luke's story's done. Luke's story was done with Return of the Jedi. This is not his story. And I think that having it end like that, where it would be like, but wait till next time, you know what I mean, with Luke is a mistake, because this is Rey and Ben's story. This is not Luke's story.
What do we know about these old Jedi when they go down, too? Obi-Wan Kenobi doesn't get much of a fight at the end because he knows my purpose here is to be a distraction and die. Yoda knows it's time for me to go. You got to go do your own thing. So he withers away. And I think Luke is a combination of exactly those two things. I'm going to let, he even gets the same line, like, strike me down in anger, I'll be with you forever, just like your father, which Snoke had called out earlier. It's like, obviously that splits you in half. And then he gets to go out the way he wanted. And Rey talks about that. It's like he wasn't, upset. It was peace. It was purpose. It was like, I've done everything I need to do. I need to go. I think you're exactly right, Nick. This isn't Luke's story anymore. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are, 34 years and all I got to see Luke Skywalker do was milk a space alien and, force project himself. But it makes total sense. That's how these old Jedi go down. And he got to go down the way he wanted to. The three we've seen go down in their own terms got to do it exactly how they wanted it. And I thought it made sense.
Perfect. I mean, he went down on his own terms. I mean, what else would have anybody wanted? Would it have been like, I want to see him get killed by Kylo Ren in a lightsaber battle, actually get chopped in half? Did you want to see him, ride off into the sunset, never to be seen again? To me, this is the most logical conclusion for him, was he saved his sister. He saved his, the rest of the resistance.
And he also realizes he drops the line, I'm not going to be the last Jedi. And he's not just talking about Rey. He's talking about the Force is unleashed, to borrow a video game line.
Yeah. And I think it's just a perfect ending for him, where it's just like, I saved him. The future is not in my hands. I tried that. It didn't work out. It's because I followed the ways of the old. We're going to let everything kind of go out the way it is. And he basically stepped aside, as he should. And that's what I think. I think there's a lot of people are just, they had all these ideas in their head of what they wanted. They wanted badass Luke Skywalker coming in there battling Snoke and, shooting Force lightning and him and his green lightsaber, projecting it back. And it's like, we've already had that. We've already had that, people. How much more of the same stuff do we need? That was everybody's complaint about The Force Awakens. It's the same thing again. We've already got this Death Star 3, this and that. And it's like, finally now it's like, you know what? You guys were kind of right. We're going to do something completely different. Now everybody's like, but no, I want it all back. And it's like, oh my God, there's no pleasing anybody anymore.
And like, I will say, the way Luke goes out and everything he does dramatically was actually like it was very well done. It was well written. But just to go full fanboy, come on, how amazing would it be if Luke did show up? Because the audience would have lost their minds.
Sure.
If he did say what Yoda did in Attack of the Clones, where all of a sudden this frail guy just goes nuts, as a Jedi, like that, like as it was satisfying in its own way. But on the other hand, it's like there was a part of me just as a movie buff fan, it's like, come on, like it would have been cool.
Oh no! It would have totally been cool.
We got that with Vader.
It would have been
cool. We
cool.
got that with him and Vader.
But I want to jump back to something. I will say I think we've seen Luke at the height of his power, Kurt, at the end of Return of the Jedi. For all the problems both of us had with that movie, we both loved when he just went, total berserko
for sure
on Vader. And I think we've seen that. I didn't know what I wanted Luke to do in this movie. I'm just glad he was in it, because I wanted him to be in Force Awakens. Apparently Mark Hamill did do. And so that he had things to do, and that it wasn't what I expected or maybe had preloaded my brain with through 30 years of EU and expectations and all that kind of stuff. I bump up against it. But on the other hand, I get it because, like I've said, this is how these guys go down. And if I wanted anything for Luke Skywalker, is I wanted him to be able to go out the way he wanted. And I think we got exactly that. I mean, yeah, it would have been cool to see him force knock over all the AT-ATs and all that. That would have been awesome, sure. But it's so much more satisfying that he is the sacrifice. He is what Ben was. He learns that, and he's even said it, this isn't something that should be controlled by a small group of people anyway. And I'm not going to let that because I've seen that start. The one thing about these two movies that I'm still just bumped up against is, can anybody explain to me how the hell the First Order came about anyway? I thought we were done at the end of Return of the Jedi. Are they ever going to drop that? Maybe they will. But I kind of want to know how it all went back to hell again. But maybe that's episode 9.
I think that's with anything, though. You know what I mean? It's like, if it's not the Nazis, it's another group. We're always at odds with each other, and then someone else is going to pick up the remnants of it. But just my last point, though, about Luke Skywalker, and, Kurt, I don't know how much big of a sports fan you are, so maybe I'll just kind of relay this over to Jay, is like, I grew up watching Brett Favre, big Packers fan, and kind of watching him, that last year that he played for the Minnesota Vikings, just a shell of himself. And just,
or like watching Jordan play for the Wizards or something.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, is that what we wanted for Luke Skywalker? Is to have him, we saw him, like you said, the height of his power. And for us to watch him just kind of whimper away and stuff like that, to me. Or in the other regard, is he fights against Kylo Ren and he beats Kylo Ren, and then everybody's going, well, guys, now Kylo Ren's lost 2 fights. My God, this is a weak villain. You know what I mean? It's a no-win if they would have done it any other way.
Well, I mean, I see what you're saying, but I again, because the movie is still fresh in my mind, and as such a fan of Luke Skywalker since I was 7 years old, it's tough to disconnect from that, to be like, we're just like, because Han Solo got to be a badass in Force Awakens. He got to kick some ass, like that bit where he throws the guy into the monster, like a classic Han Solo moment. And I just thought it's weird because it's like, Luke does save the day, but not in the way I would have done. So it's a combination of, because it's not bad, but I can't help but think that it could have been a little bit more satisfying.
No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, you want more of the action packed. You know what I mean? The crowd pleasing, everybody pumping their fist moment. A lot like Attack of the Clones, where people saw Yoda fight and they were like, "Yeah, this is awesome." And now years later, I mean, to me, I find that really silly, where it's like, you had this guy, he should be elevated above that level at his way he is. He shouldn't be sitting there doing frog jumps and flipping around like a guy from Circus Olay. He should be above that. And Luke Skywalker was above that. And again, that's what I wanted so much in the prequels. And thank you for doing that here.
Can I say, I wanted Hank Schrader to shoot Walt between the eyes, but I didn't get that either. And it's from the same guy. So I get it. Like I'm like, I wanted that because I loved that character on Breaking Bad. Maybe someday on a Fabage Factor we could do a Breaking Bad discussion. But I loved Hank. Was one of my favorite things in that show, and the way he had to go down, I was like, "Oh, that sucks," but it works. But oh God, I really wanted him to shoot Walt, But
that is a Rian Johnson thing. It's actually I'm not going to spoil what happens in Looper for anyone who hasn't seen it, but just heads up, that kind of thing does happen where it's like,
yeah, that's a good one.
You get a dramatically satisfying ending, but it's not the ending you would have come up with.
Right. And I think that's what we're saying. And that may be the whole review for this movie, is you get a dramatically satisfying thing. It's probably not what you wanted. So, yeah. But I mean, that's where where do you think?
It's what the Star Wars universe needs, but not what's the quote from Batman, Kurt?
It's
come on, you probably got this tattooed on your back. Come on.
It's the one it deserves, but not the one it needs right now.
Yep.
I just hope it works out better than, well, maybe we can understand everybody in the third of this trilogy, unlike we could Bane. At least they got rid of Kylo's mask for that.
It's one thing we didn't really talk about too much was that last shot of the child with looking up at the stars. And to me, I think that's really something I think that all Star Wars fans, especially of our three generations, really need to take a look at in this movie is these movies. We grew up with these as nostalgia pieces. You know what I mean? We saw them and they're very nostalgic when it comes to us. But in the end, these movies were never meant for us at this age. It's for that kid that's looking up at, at the stars at the end and everything. So I think that was a really, really great way for the movie to end. And I really hope people really do kind of take that to heart that, we can all have our preconceived notions of what these movies should be and everything like that. But in the end, that's who these are for. And I just really, really am thankful that they ended with that. And I really think that's what that meant. So
very, very quickly, I want to say that 100% that is what Rian Johnson was doing. He was showing a kid looking up at the stars, like that's what, Star Wars is, kids looking. It is a gorgeous moment. However, my problem with it is that, a little, dirty little small boy who's a slave with force powers, it's like I just immediately thought of Anakin Skywalker and Phantom Menace, and I thought that's a weird choice. Like you're evoking the worst Star Wars movie as the thing to send the audience out on. But I did see the message there. I'm just saying, for me personally, I thought I'm thinking about Phantom Menace as I'm walking out of this new Star Wars movie. And I thought that's the last thing I should be thinking about. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think we're at the point of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, popcorn ratings. So, Kurt, Nick, what are yours for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi? Kurt?
Okay, I will say just before I get to what I had prepared, this conversation has elevated the movie somewhat. I will also, but however, on the other hand, I will say all of our favorite parts in the movie, the stuff that we say that was really good, probably only adds up to 20 minutes of screen time, which brings me to because it hurts a little a bit, this movie, because this was the first time I came out of a Star Wars movie and I wasn't over the moon about it. And what I mean is, the first Star Wars movie I saw was the special editions in 1997. I was over the moon. I was, 11 years old, but, Phantom Menace blew me away at the time. Same with Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, Force Awakens, and Rogue One last year. And each of those times, whatever age I was, I just came out beaming, huge smile on my face, thinking it was great, particularly Rogue One, which had, that was the first, literally the first and only time an audience applauded, where I saw an audience applaud after the movie was over. And when I came out of The Last Jedi, I was feeling a little confused, just thinking, that's it? All this time to make a new Star Wars movie, and this is what they chose to do? Like, there's more on the way. It's not the same kind of like where it's like, well, and nothing else will follow. And it's like, at this point, I think I'm just kind of settled on thinking this was not a very good movie. Great parts, Like the acting was across the board, especially Carrie Fisher, who was very good, way better than she was in Force Awakens. Mark Hamill and Oscar Isaac were great. The dialogue in and of itself was good. The effects were solid. But like I said, I found the overall story in this movie to be the dullest of the series. Like Finn's entire story, search for a guy to unlock a door, that doesn't end up going anywhere. Like they unlock that door, turns out that didn't matter. They get arrested right after. I didn't feel the chemistry between the characters the same ways in The Force Awakens, mostly because they were separated in this movie. But unlike when they did that in Empire Strikes Back, I didn't care about the new character relationships. I kind of I'm heads or tails on this, but I overall I would say I think the movie wastes an opportunity to bring back Luke Skywalker, because he really does just kind of stand around on an island for 2.5 hours, and then die, as opposed to how the movie Force Awakens handled Han Solo. And this is something we didn't touch on this really at all, but I thought the endless parade of cuddly CGI creatures was stupid, felt out of place, out of sync with what J.J. Abrams did in the last movie with all the practical stuff. I didn't really care for any of the new Star Wars stuff Rian Johnson created, and thought a lot of it, like that weird mirror dream scene, came off as like pretentious and weird, where she's snapping her fingers. Like she snapped her fingers like 3 times. Like I get it, it's a reflection. And overall, apart from a few moments in the movie, like the opening battle, which was great, that light speed kamikaze, Luke showing up at the end, I thought this movie lacked the big memorable moments. It didn't like that unbelievable rush I got with the final act of Rogue One and through the entire battle, and Darth Vader's scene, or the emotional impact in Force Awakens when Han Solo died. I just didn't feel that in this movie. And just never mind Star Wars movie. Just overall, after the year we've had for movies, which has been amazing, even just genre movies like Logan, It, War for the Planet of the Apes, Get Out, and especially another sequel with a renowned director taking on a beloved sci-fi property with original cast members, Blade Runner 2049. After seeing a movie like Blade Runner 2049 and seeing how it could put a polish on old material while coming up with outstanding new ideas, I got a really hard time giving Last Jedi a pass, even as a lifelong Star Wars fan. It's not the worst movie of the year. It's no Justice League, but in my opinion, it's tough to say. I think this is the worst Star Wars movie I've seen since the Phantom Menace. Who knows what the pop culture opinion on this movie is going to be when the dust settles, if it's going to be thought of like the prequels are, or if it's going to be, maybe it's going to be hailed as a classic. And my original rating on this movie was just a small popcorn, but this conversation has elevated it a bit. I'm going to give it another shot, either in theaters or at home. But I got to say, I didn't like Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, and it gets a medium popcorn from me.
All right, Nick.
Just want you guys to breathe. Just breathe. So I'm trying to quote Luke there when he's helping let Ray out with there. So with me, one thing I've kind of noticed about myself, especially like when it comes to other people, is, if you guys ever made a large purchase in your life, be it like furniture, appliances, car, what have you, even paying for a vacation, is a lot of times people do that stuff and they get that buyer's remorse right away. Mm-hmm. They get that feeling like, oh my God, what did I just do? And from just reading a lot of people's reactions, I think that's kind of what's happening right now with this movie, is they kind of have this remorse in them in a way. And I think what's going to happen is it's not going to be right away. It might be a couple months. It might even be a couple of years. But I really think when people look back at this, they're going to see this is really the turning point for the Star Wars franchise. Now, depending on where Episode 9 goes, I think really is how Episode 8's going to go. Is Episode 9 turns out to be a really, really good movie, I think everybody's going to look back at 8 and say, thank you so much for doing that. It is a classic. It is something that we needed. It's something very, very, risky, but it paid off. And at the time, we didn't know how the series was going to end. We didn't know which story they were going to go to. So it's hard to kind of look at a story that's kind of sandwiched in between two other ones and really kind of give it a fair judgment there. But as like what I've been trying to say right throughout this whole series or this whole show is I really like this. Like I said, this is kind of like the Game of Thrones for the Star Wars universe, where they really took people's expectations and they really flipped them on their head. I thoroughly enjoyed probably 90% of this movie. I do think the casino stuff was, could have been done better. I think the Finn character could have been used a little bit better itself. But for the most part, I just really, really, really was connected to this movie and really enjoyed what they did with basically telling the audience, hey, this is all about new characters. This is all a new stuff right here. We're not going to sit there and just continually hit these same beats over and over again. We're going to do something new. So, as I've always said, is I'll always champion a risky failure over a safe bet. And this isn't a failure. It's a very, very good movie, but it was risky and it paid off and it worked for me. And like I said, I really think in a couple of years, I think, Kurt, you're going to come around to this. I really do. And I think that many, many people that are sitting there basically doing these, posts on social media where it's like, hey, look at me. I'm going to talk really badly about this to get people to react. You know what I mean? Are going to really come around to it eventually. So to me, it's a large popcorn. It really is a large popcorn. And I am really interested to see where they go next. I think this is probably the best Star Wars movie since Empire Strikes Back. I think it's right there with number 2 or number 3 on the overall list for me. But yeah, it's a large popcorn, and I'm really, really excited to see it. I'm not going to go see it right away again. I'm going to really let it kind of just simmer and really kind of, like a good whiskey. It's going to age a little bit, and then I'm going to go back and, I'm really looking forward to it.
I told you both at the beginning of this that I was so glad I took the opportunity to see it a second time, that I took that piece of advice, because I caught things and I maybe accepted things differently, having the shock worn off of it. But I told you both also my rating and overall thought about the movie didn't change at the end of seeing it again. And even going through this conversation, and I've really enjoyed talking it because it has talked up some things for me that maybe I did bump up against before that I'm not so hung up on now. That said, though, as an overall just arc of things, and I think, Kurt, you really nailed it. What we really like, or what I really like about this movie, is not even a fifth of it. There's so much in this movie that is perfunctory and just wasting time. And that's the thing I can say about this is I really wish an editor had taken a knife to this and said, you know what, we got to cut about 20 minutes out of this. If they could have trimmed this just a little bit, and I can't even get into now what you could trim out. Probably the whole Finn thing, sadly enough. You'd have to really slim that down a lot, the whole casino thing and the breakout and all that mess, and you'd lose Benicio del Toro basically playing Space Finster from Usual Suspects. But if you trim that down, maybe it'd flow a little better. It's the fact that it takes so darn long to get to thematically satisfying things and dramatically satisfying things that maybe I didn't want or didn't know I wanted, but I get why they're doing it. That's the thing that hurts me the most about this. And it's why I put this movie in the same category that I put like Attack of the Clones. Like, if you go back and listen to our review of that, Kurt and I more or less both gave that a minor pass because there's a lot of it that's kind of, the love story that we all know is horrible, but like there's parts of that really do work and that we like and stuff. And so we both were a little more favorable to it than especially The Phantom Menace. And I feel like this movie sandwiches itself somewhere between Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones for me, if I were to rank like all of them, It fits right in there. There's stuff about it I really like, and I'm glad I got to see it again. And I won't see it in theaters again, but I own it, and I look forward to revisiting and seeing if you're right, Nick, that if I soften on it more as I go. But I feel the same about it now as I did the 2 times I saw it. It's medium popcorn, which means it's good. Medium popcorn can be a passable thing, all right? Like I would say Thor Ragnarok is medium bordering on large popcorn. It's not really, it doesn't really matter, but it's a lot of fun to go through. And this movie has enough fun in it that it gets me there. And moreover, it does twist things on its head and it makes me think. And I told y'all before, having to think in a Star Wars movie was not something I expected. So I'm happy that they've done that. But I'm also left with a lot of, I don't know what they're going to do to pick up on that. And I'm almost afraid of what they're going to try to reverse course on to reset the expectations, the boundaries. I don't know. Maybe JJ will completely go off to the left again. I don't know. But I'm curious to see where they go, though. I'm with you, Nick. I want to know what happens next. I'm glad we're only going to have to wait a couple of years to find out. Thankfully, for the Disney machine in some ways, in that way, I'm really curious to see where they pick up from this. But as of just rating this for what it is, I got to give it a medium popcorn. It's a good medium, and I think you should see it, and I think you should see it and allow yourself to be challenged. I like movies that will challenge what I expect of them, and they ask me to, get rid of my own biases and all that kind of stuff. I get a kick out of some of that. I mean, I'll read stuff and literature and politics and things that's the complete opposite side of what I know or think I believe, just to make sure I'm right and that I'm hearing it from everybody's point of view. So when a movie challenges my expectations, I bristle against it, like a lot of what I've seen on the internet doing, and I think a lot of what you're reading and talking about, Nick. But I'm willing to let a movie do that if I feel like there's enough there, and there's just enough there for me to let it by. But I'm going to join Kurt in the medium popcorn rating. It's not the worst Star Wars film. It's not the worst film I've seen this year or in the last few years. But it's too darn long, and it needed another cut. It needed another polish. It needed someone else to come in and go, strike that, move that. They needed to tighten it up. And I wish this movie was a little tighter. I have a feeling when it comes out on Blu-ray and home video stuff, it's going to be longer somehow. They're going to throw another 45 minutes back, and it's going to want to be like Batman, Superman, Dawn of Justice or something.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine trying to sit through 3 hours of that. But for me, this is a medium popcorn. But I am intrigued to see where it goes, and so that's my final rating and final say on it. Well, fellas, thanks so much for jumping in on this one. We did this a lot faster than we normally do these things, but this was a big one. We wanted to make sure we got out before the end of the year with the holidays and stuff. And again, thanks to both of you for being a part of Film Strip and everything that we do here and going forward. It's always great to get in and have conversations where we can push back and forth with each other. We've been doing this together for several years now, and I think we're just keep getting better at it, if I may say so myself. So I've enjoyed the conversation, and I appreciate you guys doing it. Folks, thanks for downloading the podcast. Of course, you can always find us on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. All of our episodes are there. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Please leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. And we got one more coming for the year. We got a Christmas present for you. Me and Brian and Ron did the Ben Affleck classic, reindeer games, because we always do some annual holiday garbage. So that will show up on your feed probably not New Year's Eve, probably Christmas Eve, maybe Christmas Day. We'll try to get you an early present out there for one more podcast for the year before we come back in 2018 with what is shaping up to be a real exciting slate of stuff. We got a lot of things in the plans and in the works, and I can't wait to get to it and talk about that with you guys. Of course, Kurt, you'll be back with more Fabish Factor as different things come around. You've kind of become our Marvel and DC genre arm of the podcast, and I'm fine with that. So
sure,
yeah,
happy to be it.
Yeah. So and of course, more things. And like I say, I teased it out there. We probably need to go back and talk about Game of Thrones at some point, fellas, before it's over. So we're a couple seasons behind here at this point, but we may get back to that eventually. Of course, you can also find the new Angel retrospective Brian and I have launched on the Art of Slaying feed. Path to Redemption is the name of that. We're going through the Angel series, doing something a little different with that, kind of doing block episodes, so check that out as well. Again, thank you for all of your support. Have a wonderful holiday, everyone. From everybody here at Film Strip, for Kurt and Nick, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to the show.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes and link up with us on Facebook. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121.